Welcome to Fandom Post Radio's Top Anime of 2023 Countdown. I'm Kestrel, the shonen apologist, and with me is Brando, the greatest warrior of them all.
Hello.
Cain, the slayer.
Hello, hello.
And our very special guest on this episode, DJ of the No Style.
Hey, I am here. I exist.
Amazing.
I know no one's going to hear it because we're going to edit it out, but man, I don't know if you guys... Did you catch the clap that I had on there? It was the dopest clap. It was that perfect one.
I'm glad to say I did not catch your clap, Cain.
It was probably at
it was one of those ones where
decibel that no.
It's one of those ones where it's really loud, but it doesn't hurt your hands. It was great.
The perfect clap.
Only other people who record podcasts have any idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, it was the perfect clap. I just wanted to share it. Even the sound wave on my software, perfect.
Keep the claps in.
Get that tattooed.
That of anyone who starts the episode.
Did you say get that tattooed?
Yes, do that.
Like Steve Bloom got the recording of him saying "bang" at the end of Cowboy Bebop. Spoilers, I guess. Tattooed on his arm.
Spoilers.
Spike says "bang." Sorry, what did you say, DJ?
I can't remember.
Cool.
Great.
All right. What a very professional start to our big countdown episode. Yeah, so as per usual for these episodes, we'll be counting down each of our top 10 anime of the past year. We'll start with our kind of shorter round where we each do our 10 through 6, and we'll take turns for each of our 5 through 1. We've also got some top 5 submitted to us sprinkled in there. So at the end, we can aggregate them all together and see what came out on top overall. So yeah, unless anyone has anything else to add before we get into it, I guess DJ can get started on his.
Yeah, just really quick. How many times have we done this now? Is this our 4th time or the 3rd time?
That we've done like top anime of the year?
Yeah.
When did we start? 2017. So
Jesus
it could
Christ,
be our
that long?
Yeah,
that's a lot of years. Oh my god.
It's our 7th time.
That's absurd. I thought it was like 3 or 4. Wow, we're dying very quickly. Okay.
Time is a flat circle.
Let me just battle off this existential crisis really quick and kick things off if nobody else has anything to add.
I was just going to add in that I appreciated Kestrel saying that the 10 through 6 section is kind of shorter because we say that every year and then it never happens.
I mean... It's earliest for me, so you guys are really the ones who have the motivation to go a little bit quicker. I've got all night.
Well, taking an entire season off, and I was telling Cain before we started, but taking an entire season off has made it so I just basically barely remember anything about any anime I've ever watched. So
yeah, I can imagine.
I won't be able to talk at length, probably, which is beneficial concerning the 10 through 6. But if there's nothing else to add, I will get started now. Coming in at number 10, I have Nagatoro Season 2. Not as strong as the first season, I don't think. They tried really amping up the emotional intensity of the show, and while it worked, it lacked a lot of the fun quirkiness that the initial season of Nagatoro had, and there was a lot more focus on side characters, and that's not really one of the series' strong points. So I liked it. I didn't like it nearly as much as the first season, which was, I think it cracked my top 5. But at number 9, I have Skip and Loafer, which is a show that we talked about a lot on our podcast. Just a fun little seinen / shoujo series. Like, I don't know what fucking demographic they were aiming at, but it was a cute romance by my favorite studio, PA Works. It was cool having a strong female protagonist who kind of just like didn't let misunderstandings ever happen at any point, because it makes a romance series go by a lot quicker. And I don't mean that in like a sort of, it was too fast paced sort of way. It just kind of, there wasn't a lot of downtime, and I appreciated that and thought it was fun and it was cute. Speaking of fun and cute, though, I've got Horimiya Peace at number 8. Again, not as strong as the first season, just like Nagatoro, but you can't really throw Horimiya's characters into an anime and have it not be good. So, kind kind of all over the place, just vignette styled stuff like Horimiya normally does. Doesn't follow like a direct linear story this time. And it was just an enjoyable romantic comedy. 7 got something really fucking weird that not a lot of people watched or enjoyed. But I have Mahou Shoujo Magical Destroyers at number 7. Yeah. Extremely creative. That's really the one word that I can use to describe this. There were so many directorial missteps in this show, but it was so messy by design that I feel like that kind of added to the chaos of the whole thing and really just created a unique viewing experience, if not anything else. Definitely one of the most memorable shows I've watched in recent years. And while I struggle to call it good because it was really low on the production value end of things and just sporadic and nonsensical. It was good in the entertainment department, and that's why we watch things at the end of the day. So that was Mahou Shoujo Magical Destroyers at 7. 6, and I won't spend long on this at all because I know it will come up again. I have Oshinoko. And yeah, I'll just keep my comments to that because it's going to be somebody's top 5.
Yeah, I'll just note briefly what you said about entertainment value. It's going to come up a lot in my picks. So, yeah, I'll touch on that.
It's like the most important thing. And a lot of people, when it comes to critiquing shit, kind of throw that aside.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Brand had something to say about Magical Destroyers, though.
I just thought, I'm glad you mentioned it because I know it's not going to be anywhere else in the discussions today.
Oh, no.
But I just wanted to bring up that I made like a short list of like side awards, and I gave Magical Destroyers my Wasted Potential Award because I really believed it could have been like a top 5 show even for me, but it just never reached that.
I'd give it my best opening of the season, though.
Yeah. Yeah, easily best, like top 3 opening for me of the year, for sure.
Yeah, it was, definitely a lot of missed potential there. And it was only a shell of what it could have been, but I feel like it doesn't detract entirely from how much I enjoyed it at the end of the day. It could have been a 10 out of 10. It wound up like an 8.
Yeah. I'm glad I at least ended up on your list.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I will give one honorable mention to Bungo Stray Dogs' 5th season. But for my actual top 10, I'll transition right into my number 10, which is Oshinoko. Yeah, so this is from the creator of one of my favorite series, Kaguya-sama. It's a very thoughtful series. It begins by acknowledging the lies that are inherent to the idol industry and the fans who embrace that. And then it quickly delves deeper and deeper into the dark side of the entertainment industry overall. It focuses on Japan primarily, but most of what it explores is pretty universal, and it's often uncomfortably insightful. Despite that, it knows how to have a good time when it should be having a good time. It's also very sincere in its depiction of artists that are passionate about their craft. And even if you're not interested in the series itself, I do recommend checking out the music video of the opening song Idol by Yoasobi. They have like full anime music videos for a lot of their songs that are anime theme songs. So you can just watch like a few minutes of original Oshinoko anime in that video, and it's a super good song. My number 9 is Blue Giant. Some of that other stuff that I talked about with like entertainment value and how I might rank anime differently than some other media and films and such. Based on that, maybe this should be a little bit higher. I do think that it's one of the best films of the year. It's one of those anime that's 100% accessible to non-anime fans, especially if they appreciate music. It's just a big, fantastic love letter to jazz, creativity, and performance. It's got some surprising pathos in its run, and of course, incredible music. They've got the Japanese jazz virtuoso Hiromi Uehara, and it's also directed by Yuzuru Tachikawa, who directed Mob Psycho 100. And he just like expresses the ecstasy of being enraptured in your own performance with just breathtaking visuals for the big climaxes. I will mention that some anime fans probably gonna be put off by some of the CG and rotoscoping in the scenes leading up to those climactic moments, but overall very good. My number 8 is Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba Swordsmith Village arc. Now, I feel the need to defend myself whenever I say that, which I guess means like it's a guilty pleasure. But my main philosophy on this, again, I will get into in depth later for one that's much higher on my list that kind of has similar pros and cons to discuss. So I'll be brief on this. I'll just say, Demon Slayer doesn't blow us away with innovation every season necessarily, but it's still like one of the finest examples of executing its tried and true shonen formula. And this season of it does give us a few tweaks that I appreciate, most notably some of the new character dynamics. Not only do we get a break from Zenitsu and Inosuke screaming all the time, but our new cast of characters actually gives us some quiet, subtle humor. So that's very welcome for this series. My number 7 is Link Click Season 2. So this is one of the really great Chinese co-productions from the past few years. And for its second season, it opts for much more serial storytelling compared to the episodic first season. So by doing that, it's able to weave a very complex plot, even more complex than the first one. And it dives into very harrowing, traumatic scenes. But they result in very poignant catharsis when the tension finally lets up. And my number 6 is Heaven Official's Blessing, Season 2. This is the other really good Chinese co-production that I watch. It's also directed by Howling Lee. And this one's actually still running. I don't know how many more episodes it has. It's always been a aesthetically gorgeous series. This season gets into the darker side of its main characters, especially the protagonist. Gets into his background. It explores that in a very different light than we really expect based on his character so far. Plus, it's got plenty of spectacular action sequences that really take advantage of that flowing animation style. All right, got comments on Blue Giant from people?
Yeah, just real quick. It's funny, another one of your top picks that ended up on my short list, but Blue Giant was definitely my favorite animated film of the year. I just, for some reason, don't put them on like the seasonal list of top 10s, but definitely worth giving a watch if you're into jazz or just crazy animation. As you said, there's definitely a little bit of off-putting CGI for some of it. It's like half of it is like bad CG and half of it is just like mind-boggling psychedelic music animation gumbo.
Yep.
So definitely worth a watch. It's a nice, just like tight little film. Yeah, very inspiring, nice, very good music. So highly recommend that.
Yeah, my really only question was logistics, which is how do you watch it right now? I don't know.
Yeah, you probably can't right now. I think G-Kids has the Blu-ray coming out before too long, though.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, but didn't find much info.
Okay. Yeah, might not be up yet, but it'll be out before too long.
Yeah, I saw that you could buy the soundtrack, but I was like, I kind of want to watch the movie first. That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like it's wrapping around to me for 10 through 6. So my number 10 is Spy Family Season 2. Then number 9 is Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Number 8 is Witch from Mercury Season 2 or Core 2, whichever one it counts as. Then Hell's Paradise at 7. And then Pluto at 6. I don't really have a ton to say about either one of these because they're all still very good and I like them all. I guess Spy Family, it was good to see Yor doing stuff, but parts of the other season were entertaining and had some nice comedy moments, but there's the fear that nothing's ever really going to happen, and I kind of got that way here, where some light stuff did occur, especially during the Yor sections, but it's still just like, this is the status quo moving forward, and that's how that's going to go. And then Jujutsu Kaisen had some really, really good fight scenes that I enjoyed, but I am just fucking sick of seeing Yuji lose all the time. Do something.
And he lost.
Yeah, just
He
do
lost
something,
bad.
man. Do something. But yeah, that's about it. That's my 10 through 6.
Alrighty. Well, before I get into my 10 through 6, just some quick honorable mentions to AOT final chapters. That one also, similar to Blue Giant, I didn't know if I wanted to include. But also to some ones that were unfinished because of timing and that could have been on the list if I finished them. Zom 100 and Baki Hanma. But get into my 10 through 6. At number 10, I have Bungo Stray Dogs Season 4. I just feel like Bungo Stray Dogs in general just like keeps getting better and better. And I thought the 4th season had a really strong opening with the flashback arc. Really good stuff. Like the character designs and animation are always top notch. The musical choices for the opening and ending themes are always fire, and they are just so good at cueing them at the end of the episodes to come in. Like every time an episode ends, I'm just like, oh shit, I gotta watch the next one. And season 5 probably could have ended up on this list somewhere too, but that was another show that I just got swamped for time and never got to. At number 9, I have my dark horse of the year, which goes to Overtake. I surprisingly did not expect to like this show as much as I did, and for people who don't know, it's a show about F4 racing. And despite it being in that lane of like shonen sports, I feel like it's less of a like Kuroko or Prince of Tennis or whatever type, and more along the lines of like a Ping Pong the Animation, where it's a character-driven story that is driven through the sport of F4 racing. And I thought it had some really compelling narratives to tell, and wrapped them up pretty nicely in a single season. So big shout-outs to Overtake. Number 8, I have Trigun Stampede, which I feel like was kind of a hot topic for a lot of people, as it being, you know, a remake of a 90s classic that a lot of people love. And you know, of course, the full 3D CG was a bit of a hot issue for people, but I personally think that Orange are the best studio in the business when it comes to 3D. And while I feel like the first episode or two had some like not the most pleasant looking designs for some of the characters and the backgrounds, I feel like as the season went on, looked more and more stellar, and they really honing in on the dramatic elements of the series. And I feel like now that we know that there's going to be another season of it, they're really fleshing it out in a way that will be an even more compelling narrative than the original. So I'm really excited for that to continue. At number 7, I have Oshinoko. This one is almost purely on my list because of the opening episode / movie. I feel like that in itself is such a selling point for the series, and it brings so much shock value, and it's so tightly written that it in itself, the first episode special, is like something that I think everyone needs to watch. And I'm glad it got as popular as it did. I knew a lot of people that are casual anime watchers that were really enjoying it, and I do enjoy the conversations we were able to have about the poignant and very harrowing things that are going on in the real world that it touches on. And I found that to be, as controversial as it is, it's conversations that need to be had, because of avoiding them is not going to fix anything. And at number 6, which may be surprising to some, I have Frieren. I'm really loving this show. It looks beautiful. The fantasy vibes are like perfectly crafted, and I'm really loving the world building as it goes on, and the characterization as well. I would maybe put it higher if we weren't only halfway through it, because I feel like there's still so much more for it to tell. and it could very easily have been on the top of this list as we continue forward. But still, very enjoyable show. Maybe one of the best fantasy shows to come out in years. So, highly recommend Frieren.
Yeah. Oshinoko, I just want to comment on that again now that things been pointed out to me. Yeah, first episode was great. And I feel like, and I'm surprised to hear it higher on your countdowns than it was on mine, because I remember when it first started, everybody liked it more than me, which I was like, maybe I'll grow into it. And I did grow into it. I liked the second half of the show a lot more than I liked the first half, which isn't to say that it wasn't an expertly crafted pilot. It was the best episode of anything this season, I would say. But it wasn't really, it didn't cater to me the way the rest of the season did. I had some issues in the episodes immediately preceding it that have essentially vanished, that have propelled the show higher up my list. But yeah, right now I enjoy it a lot, and I expect to enjoy it significantly more, because I feel like this is going to be that type of show. Also, I really liked the fucking terrace house arc. So
Yeah.
Cool that we got that.
I think it is interesting that first episode probably hurts the show as much as it helps it, in that for some people, the rest of the narrative maybe won't resonate as much as the initial, or maybe like in your instance, you ended up liking it more than what the initial setup even was.
Right, because it is such a different thing from the rest of the series that it can easily go either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a lot of complaints from people about how it was like a bait and switch type situation, which, in a sense, I guess, kind of. But that's the point. So
yeah, I mean,
them.
Dude's got to sell manga volumes. It's like, how do you do it? You pull the rug out.
Yeah, I loved that. I love when writers aren't afraid to make big dramatic moves like what's made in the first episode of that show, and that made me really respect it a lot, even if what immediately followed put me off.
Yeah, I definitely had, kind of the opposite trajectory, where I loved it more than anything in the first episode, and then certainly as it got near the end, I was kind of falling off relatively. But yeah, I will say, in terms of like the bait and switch, I do appreciate the big twist a lot, but also, anime fans kind of had it easy. Hopefully they didn't get it spoiled for them. But manga fans, they were reading this for a few weeks, months maybe, thinking it was going one way, and then they got the twist. At least they packed it all into an hour-and-a-half movie for us for the first episode, so we knew from week one what we were getting into.
Probably felt even cooler, like reading it for months and then just boom. Aw.
Yeah. It probably would have been impossible to keep that under wraps, though. Like, once it got underway with the anime, so I think it's for the best that we got it all out in the first.
With how fucking popular that show is in Japan, like just coming back from Japan, I don't think I've been on an episode since I've come back. Oshinoko was everywhere. It was fucking, you could not see it. Like, no matter where you went, it was just there. And I didn't realize, I guess, the gravity of how gigantic that show is in Japan. So yeah, it wouldn't have been something that people would be able to conceal.
Right. Okay, cool. Cain, you got Chris's list?
I do. And Oshinoko is not on it.
This is Chris Beveridge, by the way, our Lord and Savior.
Is this the first time we've had his top 5 on here?
Maybe. We got his top 10 for top anime of all time. I know I made sure he gave us that, but for yearly, probably.
Yeah, I don't remember ever including this. Cool, I'm excited.
Wow.
It's going to be all hentai. I'm calling
it. God, I hope so.
He probably edited it to keep all the hentai off of it, but there's the other top 5, the real top 5.
Yeah.
All right, so at number 5, we have the Cafe Terrace and its goddesses. Number 4 is Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible.
Interesting.
Number 3 is Otaku Elf. 2 is our dating story, and number 1 is Skip and Loafer. There is a bonus for an anime called Scavenger's Reign, which I'm not familiar with.
I think that was a bonus because it's not actually anime at all. He just wanted to mention it.
Okay. I'm not sure what the fuck that is.
Yeah, that was like a French production, right? On Netflix or something?
I know it was like, yeah, right. I know it was an American thing. It might have been a French studio. But it was Max, I think.
It was. American adult animated science fiction drama television. Jesus.
Okay.
You know how much I hate the fact that everyone feels like they need to say American animation? or sorry, I meant adult animation.
American.
I was going to say, I specify American animation.
No, yeah, sorry. The fact that you need to say that you need to say adult animation as if you'd need to say like adult any other type of media.
Adult television show?
Right. Adult drama. Adult film means a different thing, I suppose.
Especially in
this
Chris's
means better
world.
Film.
Yeah.
Better. True art.
That's cool. We got a number 1 vote for Skip and Loafer, so I'm happy about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's not porn.
No, it's quite far from
quite
porn,
wholesome.
Really.
Yeah. The least porn.
Well, this is a very like Junji Ito list.
All things in balance. Yeah, what he draws versus who he is. Love
Nice.
that.
But yeah, that's Chris's top 5. So
Cool.
yeah, I'm also glad to see some Skip and Loafer on there as well, since that's a very delightful show.
Yeah. All right. We'll get into our top 5s now. So my number 5 is Vinland Saga Season 2. Man, I feel like I'm ranking this too low now because, well, spoilers, it'll come up later. And based on everything that I have to say about it, it should probably be higher. But yeah, God, what a bold series Vinland Saga is. So it spends its entire first season with its protagonist as this extremely unlikable little shit who makes all the worst decisions possible. And then it starts its second season with that same protagonist, utterly lifeless and passive. And most of the season is completely devoid of any of the action that might have made a lot of people Vinland Saga fans in the first season. But this season, this is the real Vinland Saga. That first season finale, which I think is a masterpiece, it's called the end of the prologue for a reason. That wasn't what the series is about. That whole first season, not what it was about. So that was just the backstory of the regret that Thorfinn needed to begin his true journey. This is really a story about pacifism, and this season is where Thorfinn starts to operate according to his own will. This isn't a series that romanticizes Vikings. It's very much the opposite. It takes a look at that culture, and in the process, kind of the audience that thinks the violence was the good part of the series, and it demands that they answer for the idea that murder can be celebrated while compassion is condemned. This is the kind of story that needs to be told, especially about times in history where bloodshed was the reality of society, because human beings haven't inherently changed. So the same moral dilemmas must have always existed, regardless of the public's ethical standards. It took a lot of pain to get to this point, but it's very important that Thorfinn finally understands he has no enemies. If Vinland Saga was a live-action American drama, it would be the biggest thing on TV. It would sweep the Emmys. It would always have a new season in production. Unfortunately, it finds itself in this weird position of being underappreciated by most of its market. So we kind of just have to hope that the Western audience is enthusiastic enough about it to justify another season and, some future year.
That'll be hard with violence becoming less prevalent in the series, because that's the shit that Americans love.
Yeah. So
that's one of the main criticisms you would hear about, is that it didn't have action.
Right. Which is completely missing the point of the series. And actually, I think like ANN did a really good little interview with Yukimura when he was at San Diego Comic-Con, which I'm very upset that I missed, but at least I got his autograph. But he talks about like his philosophy on the series and the kind of story that he's trying to tell, and just his philosophy on war and violence in general, and how much that is baked into the core of the series. So check that out. It is very much not meant to glorify violence in any way. That was never. Yeah, so like I said, probably deserves to be higher on my list. But even though I think it's much better than the already excellent first season overall, I do think some of it wasn't executed as strongly as in the manga, which obviously I have a bias to since I read and loved that first. And certain chunks of it, especially early on, did feel like a visual downgrade from the first season, but it did definitely bounce back on that aspect. And as we've talked about on the podcast, the ending of this season was not nearly as strong as the ending of the first season. So, that knocked it down a little bit as well.
I just wanted to shout out Kestrel for grabbing me the Vinland Saga hoodie at Anime Central because I could not attend that weekend. Well, technically, I did attend for closing ceremony. I'm probably the only person in the world that ever attended an anime con just for the closing ceremony. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Moving on up to my number 5 if we don't have anything else for Vinland Saga. I've got Kimi wa Hokugo Insomnia, or After School Insomniacs, as I think they retitled it. Really cute and nostalgic, that's the word that I'll use, romance series about 2 kids with insomnia, which is not really a plot point I expected, but I needed. It just talks about these 2 kids who just meet by chance in like the school's aviary one day because they can't sleep when they're at home, and the only time that they're able to is at school. And so they meet like that, and they start off as friends, and they quickly realize that they have a lot in common, and it slowly sort of unearths the reason for their insomnia. It's not just like a thing that they were born with. It's like a result of some sort of trauma. And it's just a really cute show about 2 kids who start falling in love for each other and become each other's support systems. And it's really, it feels like going back, and this is a thing that I have in common with a lot of like teen romance shows. It feels like it takes you back to like a summer vacation in high school or middle school or something, where you're like free and you're experiencing love for the first time. And it really felt like that was not only showcased in the proper way, but I don't know, it was a really immersive experience, and the art was just really great. It was full of really sentimental like indie rock, so it felt kind of like being at a concert sometimes, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. But not a lot of people watched it, unfortunately. Had a popular manga over in Japan, and I know a bunch of people in my Discord server were going crazy over this show because tons of manga readers over there. But I don't know. I feel like it's going to stay with me, and then I'm going to regret putting it at 5 instead of somewhere higher up, kind of like I regretted with A Place Further Than the Universe, because it had that same sort of compassionate mood to it, where it's like you grow attached to the characters as the show goes on. And while I didn't form bonds with them the same way that I felt I did in A Place Further Than the Universe, it was still that same sort of, I guess, melancholy, where it's happy shit happening, but like the underlying tones are kind of depressing. But it's nice finding characters who are able to become the light for one another. And I like this show a lot.
I'll just mention that I watched it, so you don't have to feel isolated.
Oh, cool.
And I enjoyed it, yeah. I don't have as strong of feelings, but I definitely enjoyed it, so yeah.
Nice. I forgot you watched that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did seem like it flew under the radar in that way, because I remember seeing stuff about the hype around it, but then nothing afterwards.
It was on High Dive, which doesn't help.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Comparing it to A Place Further in the Universe does help pique my interest, though.
I mean, don't go in expecting like fucking Shirase email levels of sadness. It's a much more calm show, where it's like they're sad undertones to it, but there's not like big dramatic things that happen. It's just kind of they are airing out their troubles to one another, and it's depressing knowing that people have to go through shit like that. But also hopeful in the fact that if you're one of those people, you can find someone like they had, and that's nice.
Well, getting into my number 5, maybe slightly more controversial than my Frieren placement is my actual favorite high fantasy anime of the year, which was Ranking of Kings Treasure Trove. So I know there was a lot of negative talk around this season just because it wasn't like a true sequel to the first Ranking of Kings season, but I would beg to differ that it is a sneaky sequel in that there were a lot of moments of characterization for characters that, you know, were fleshed out by what we knew from the previous season and will probably come into play if it ever gets another season. And also by the end of it, it kind of did give us a soft launching point for wherever the story will go next. But I think even if it didn't feel like it had a very, tightly wound narrative compared to the first season, I still really liked the batch of episodes we got here. As I said, a lot of the characterization was much appreciated, especially for the brothers, the Underworld brothers. More Despa is always good. He's always a laugh. The Oaken episodes were very emotional, and I feel like his story is like one of the saddest in the show. So getting to flesh out more of like his tragic character arc, I think, was a really good call. And surprisingly, also the King of the Underworld, Desha, I feel like got a lot more characterization and kind of put him in a more sympathetic light. And of course, more Boji is always amazing. More Boji Kage brotherly moments, more Hilling being a great mom. I just feel like even if it wasn't a true sequel, I had no complaints about what extra stuff we did get. And the show came back with another amazing opening and ending theme, as well as the animation for them. And despite it not being what everyone wanted, it was just about everything I wanted it to be. So I'm really happy with what I got from it.
All right. So it looks like we got ourselves a bit of a shared entry coming up here, which is always fun.
Yeah.
So it's going to be my number 5, and I believe, Kestrel, you're number 4, right?
Yeah, so you should go first as the number 5.
Ah, excellent. I'm honored. So the number 5 on my list is The Apothecary Diaries, which is actually still airing right now. So it isn't complete yet either, in the same way that Frieren is not complete. But just overall, very enjoying this series. I think if I could pick any of the ones on my top 5 that sort of match what you folks are talking about earlier in regards to enjoyment factor, this is definitely on the top of that list for me as somewhat caring of its rank. Like, I think it looks fine, and I like the music, and the art's good as well, but I just really enjoy watching it and enjoying the story and everything. I do not know how often we get, say, murder or murder-adjacent mysteries in anime shows in the same way that The Apothecary Diaries handles it, which I found incredibly refreshing to watch, at least personally, seeing Mao Mao kind of scuttle all around the palace, figuring out who's being poisoned, or just poisoning herself for fun, and things like that, as one tends to do, is always just a joy to watch. And one of my favorite bits of the show is also how creeped out Mao Mao is by Jinshi, and how it feels almost exactly how I feel watching it, as does my wife feels watching it. One of the things I laughed at the most actually wasn't a joke inside of the show. It was the first time Jinchi tries to hit on Mao Mao. My wife went, ew, gross. And then the second scene was Mao Mao walking away going, ew, gross. Exactly in the same way. And I just like how you see the main protagonist of the show not fall at all for the juvenile woo and whimsy of what is, at least as a joke, trying to be a sort of romantic interest. But I also appreciate how Jinshi is a little bit more than that, especially as the show goes on. And I do very much so love that his kink is Mao Mao just stepping on him and shit. That is something that I find very entertaining on top of that. But yeah, this is just a show that I really like watching, and I don't try to figure out anything that's going on either, because I've learned a long time ago that my brain isn't built for mystery shows in any way, shape, or form unless they're very bad and predictable. So I just like to follow along as someone watching Mao Mao do her work to figure stuff out. And also watching her slap around that one lady in waiting was fucking cool as hell. So yeah, I wish I had deeper things to say about it, but it's a lot of fun. It doesn't shy away from what a courtesan does. It doesn't try to gloss over how creepy and shitty life in the palace could be, even as a concubine, where it's, there's a concubine who's like 14 years old, and, they have a distinct purpose of bearing children and doing other things. And Mao Mao, for the most part, is aware of this, being raised in a house of courtesans and things like that. So the show doesn't try to sugarcoat it too much. It doesn't give it to you in super bleak terms all of the time, so it isn't off-putting, but it at least doesn't try to make, the emperor just seem like a cool playboy that all these women want to hang out with. Like, there is a distinct purpose for them to be there, and everybody is aware of that. So, yeah.
Cool.
Kestrel, what do you think?
It's also, my number 4. As I had mentioned on the podcast previously, I had read the manga beforehand and was very excited when the anime was announced. And it's actually based on a light novel series, but the anime definitely pulls from the art style and the storyboarding of the manga very directly. So it is kind of just an adaptation of that, which I appreciate, because I think everything that they did with that visual language added a lot to the story. Also, the thing that I was really excited about when the adaptation was announced was maybe the most stacked list of composers I've ever seen. So I just want to point them out. It's got Satoru Kosaki, who scored the Haruhi series and most of the Monogatari series. It has Alisa Okehazama, who scored Jujutsu Kaisen, and Kevin Penkin, who scored Made in Abyss. So yeah, amazing lineup there, and it's exactly the kind of like eclectic, brilliant blend that makes a soundtrack such an enriching component of anime, coming off, a print medium. But I was also shockingly impressed by all the other aspects of the production as well. The main staff outside of the composers and the studios involved, they weren't the most inspiring to me initially, but the adaptation really turned out to be just this magnificent realization of the story that I had read, and it's totally not Chinese setting that it takes place in.
Yeah, definitely not.
Definitely not China.
Not sure where you get that idea from.
Yeah, not even a little. Actually, of course, as mentioned, what makes the storytelling so great is always the lovable protagonist, Mao Mao. And I think, in a way, she's actually like Thorfinn, in that she's like this representation of modern sensibilities trapped in this past era that's so determined to make sure everyone fits a warped archetype of their contemporary expectations. And, even if she claims otherwise, she can't hold back how much she does care about improving that mindset. So we just gradually watch her transform the world around her with what little power she can kind of carve out, which is very similar to Thorfinn's character and kind of how he operates once he gets, self-actualization. So yeah, that is my number 4 for the year.
Beautiful. I will continue with my number 4 pick, which happens to be Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. And
Nice.
I will put a disclaimer that any other year, this show could very well be my number 1 pick. It just had the unfortunate happenstance of 2 of my favorite mangas being adapted this year, as well as one of my favorite arcs of shonen manga ever. So it has a stiff competition, but that's not to say that Scott Pilgrim isn't great, because I think this is like a needle in the haystack type of like production that you find an East meets West type of thing, where the full-on cast and crew and music composers and the director and all the people from the original film coming back to create something with one of my favorite modern studios in Science Saru, and just creating what I would call Scott Pilgrim rebuild. And I don't want to talk about the story too much, but going into the first episode, I was sitting there like, oh, you know what? The style like looks great. It's very much capturing exactly the Scott Pilgrim look and feel. And even to the story beats of the first movie, you're like, oh yeah, this is, exactly about what I expected. And then I started to get this feeling like, oh, I guess this is probably just going to, retread everything that happened in the movie, but, expand upon it a bit, maybe give a little bit more characterization. Then the first episode ends and you're like, oh, no, we're going somewhere else with this. And I think it's awesome that in every iteration of the Scott Pilgrim story, whether it's the movie or the games or the comics or now this new anime, they are taking a new spin on things, showing you a new perspective, taking, someone else's story and enhancing it in a way that I feel like really rounds out this property in a way that not a lot of other properties like get the chance to do. And I watched it in the English dub because, for the fact that they brought back every actor to do it is mind-boggling to me. Like, Chris
That's the
Evans,
correct way to watch the show. You're supposed to watch this in English. Yeah,
it is. And like Chris Evans, that guy is America's ass. This guy went on to become MCU like poster boy. Like, he could easily just like shrug this off and not care, but obviously everyone that was involved in this cares because, Edgar Wright is amazing, and I'm sure he reached out to all these people and was just like, hey, we're bringing the band back together, and they're all like, hell yeah.
they do that all the time. I love it. Like during COVID, back in 2020 or 2021, they did a whole ass like table read of the whole movie, and they were just on Skype, and that shit, I don't know if you guys watched it, but it was great too.
I need to watch
Sarah
that
took out a
table read.
guitar and like actually played the songs.
I love that. Yeah, and I feel like, you don't really get that from many other things. And bringing Anna Managuchi back for the music, it's just like lightning in a bottle. Like, you really can't get something like this. And like I said, if it wasn't competing against some of my like favorite media in the last decade, this could easily be a number 1 pick because it was something really special.
Yeah, this would absolutely be on my countdown if I watched it, like the whole thing, because I watched the first 2 episodes, and that wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, it's warranted if I put this on my countdown after a whole bunch of shows that I watched the whole thing of.
Yeah.
No,
Another reason it's not higher is I binged it the last 2 days.
Yeah, I wanted to. I watched it like during the last hour of my flight back, and I haven't been able to watch literally anything since. But those 2 episodes alone were way better than I thought it was going to be. And when the show was announced, and even when I saw the trailers, it was just like, yeah, it was called an anime, but I kind of guess I refused to believe it was actually going to be an anime, even with Science Saru being involved. But no, it is. Like, it feels like one. It's a legitimate anime, and just because it's just fucking originally in English doesn't mean it's not anymore. But yeah, what they did with the story kind of blew my mind because I was not expecting that in any capacity. Like I read the comics, I'm a fucking Scott Pilgrim whore. Like I saw that movie in theaters probably like 6 or 7 times. It's one of my fucking favorite comedy movies ever. I love everything about it. I read the comics. I wrote like 3 book reports on Scott Pilgrim.
That's amazing.
And you know, when I saw the anime, I was kind of concerned again because there's a character who they left out of the original movie, Lisa, who just got shafted and not included for whatever. And I was like, oh, they're just not going to include her again because fuck her, I guess. But I mean, they just fucking rewrite everything, which is not a thing I expected, but a very pleasant surprise. And it's kind of, I don't know, reignited my love for all things Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan, and I feel like there's Easter eggs in this too that like the production team obviously are also Edgar Wright fans because there's like lots of nods in it that you're like, oh, I'm so glad they included that, or like this person made a guest appearance, stuff like that. I don't want to spoil it because like it's so nice to catch it in the moment, but yeah.
So yeah, my only question about this, going back to what you were saying about, is it really going to be anime?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, I realize I had Chinese co-productions on my list, so you can tell me to fuck off. But like, is it really anime? Because like,
It is.
Sure, Science Saru animated it, but the writers are American. I think the director is American. The producers are American. There's companies outside of Science Saru are American. So like, back in the 90s, all the American animated shows were actually animated by like Sunrise and studios in Japan, like Batman the Animated Series, Inspector Gadget, TMS did a bunch of those. And we never call them anime. So like, is this any different?
I think that's one of those questions like as old as time where like both sides can have validity to them. And I just think nowadays like anime as a category for like being rigidly for and by Japanese productions is like I just feel like it's too rigid because of the way so much entertainment we get nowadays is like co-produced and stuff. So it's one of those things where if you called it an anime, I wouldn't bat an eye, and if you called it not an anime, I wouldn't bat an eye either. But personally, I would call it one. But yeah,
I think you just have to watch the opening. And like that, I think that's when I decided, like, oh, this is an anime. This is like an actual anime opening.
Can we call it American adult animation?
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, I mean, it's like Avatar, right? So, a lot of people call Avatar anime. It has nothing Japanese involved at all, but it is very much in the style of anime.
Avatar's almost anime. It's missing the opening and the ending.
The opening, right, exactly.
Like, those are quintessential parts of anime. You need those.
But yeah, like, not only is there a question of whether it's anime, but then if it's not, is it an American animated series or a Korean animated series? Because by the definition of Scott Pilgrim being anime, I think you could call it a Korean animated series because it's animated entirely in Korea. But all the rest of the production is in America, which I think is the same for Scott Pilgrim, right?
I feel like it starts to get wishy-washy because then you're like, okay, who directed it? Okay, someone who's actually a Spanish animator and director that also worked on like Star Wars Visions, and it's like, well, do we consider that anime? And like, I don't know. I feel like the line just gets blurred so much at one point that who cares what you can call it? Yeah,
I guess.
Has the term anime been coined yet?
What?
It's not American anime, but just anime.
Please don't ever say that. Well, I think we've come to the takeaway that anime is a meaningless label, and why are we even doing this podcast?
Yeah.
All right. Well, nice talking to you guys.
Yeah.
This should just be our top 10 TV series of the year.
My number one goes to Big Mouth Season 8.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, no.
One anime.
That made me throw up.
In a good way?
No.
Oh.
What's the good way to throw up?
Well, I feel like isn't that show supposed to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, we can move on to our next illustrious number 4 pick here with Cain.
Alrighty. So, my number 4 pick is Skippin' Loafer, an actual anime.
Real
So,
anime.
I don't
So,
think we can
real
debate this one,
anime.
guys.
Skippin' Loper. Yep, that's what we're going with. I gushed over it while it was airing for many different reasons, but the one that I keep coming back to when I was making this list is just the fact that I think it is a romance, especially a teenage romance, that everybody knows how to talk to each other and communicate their feelings and realize very basic facts about each other and how to foster friendships as well as romantic feelings, and it just makes me all warm and fuzzy on the inside in that way. When someone has a problem, they will tell the other person in a kind way, and they will talk it out and have a good time and hang out with each other, and I think that's just precious, and I wish more shows would do that. I cannot express how refreshing it was to see, and I do not remember character names anymore. I barely remember them when the shows are actually airing, as everybody here knows. So I'll just say, like, the main sort of budding romance between the two characters is based in a strong friendship where they just kind of talk to each other, and there are no miscommunications or weird expectations. Like, there are small ones that are just, that's how it happens in human interaction, but we don't have a giant episode where somebody completely overreacts to a misinterpreted sentence or text or anything like that, and then it turns into this giant thing that requires a grotesque display of romance or something to get over. It just feels so mature in a way that a lot of shows really don't in that fashion. And I think the main pairing is really good for each other. They rub off on each other really well in terms of developing their own personalities as they go through school and figure out who they are without it feeling over the top. It's just nice and real, which is one of the main reasons I also like some of the other romance stuff that I've read eventually or watched. Like, I know it's a little bit more spastic, but Vodakoi is kind of in the same way. It's like, oh, they're a bunch of adults, and when they have a problem, they tend to just do it like adults, except the one couple that their whole shtick is they fight all the time. So you have to discount that. But yeah, I really liked it. I hope we get more of it. If I could make one criticism that definitely kept it off of the list, it's how the main antagonist, or at least as much of one that you could say this show has, kind of gets off scot-free after treating our main boy like shit for years and blackmailing him, and then he just decides, I forgive you and I don't care anymore, and then she just gets to leave. It is not
such a good guy.
Yeah, but that is not satisfying.
Oh no, not at all.
Not at all. Because she basically spends most of their teenage years being like, you're not allowed to be happy at all because something that's not even your fault.
Just fucking being a horrible person all around.
Yeah, especially because it wasn't his fault. Like, he didn't do anything to engender what had happened to her that derailed her career, at least for a few years, because he was also like 8 years old or some bullshit. Like, man,
I can't even remember like what her thing was.
Like the inciting incident?
Like what, like wasn't she just like seen with like dudes at like a karaoke place or some shit?
Yeah, and there was alcohol and cigarettes, but there was no proof that she had partaken in any of it, and he was there too, but she blames him because he didn't get any of the
made it sound
negative
like
feedback.
Such a bigger deal when it was like first talked about.
They really did, and I wonder if that's our sort of Western ideology coming into play, where we don't really care about. Yeah, see, we have people like, you know, child stars all the time that throughout the history of Hollywood, you've had your Judy Garlands and your Macaulay Culkins and shit that just kind of do whatever and are followed by paparazzi rags constantly. So we kind of just know that that's how show business works. So we don't really bat much of an eye for better or for worse. But over there, it's probably way more puritanical. I mean, isn't that how it is for idol culture?
Yeah, but I feel like even for idol culture, the way that it's portrayed in the show was exaggerated, especially considering that she was still like a popular model. Like, it's not like her fucking career was ruined. She was still actively working. And
Yeah,
so
I
don't know
really-
like what the big deal was.
My main hang up with using that as a excuse, not an excuse, but sort of like, why were you mad? It turned out perfectly fine, is the idea that it couldn't have, like, she got lucky that it did. So I didn't want to be like, your life was fine, because that nobody likes it when you use that in an argument with them. Like, well, whatever, it worked out for you, so why are you mad? It's, the principle of the thing is why she's mad. Granted, it's still way super overblown, and the fact that she got away with treating him like shit and blackmailing him for fucking years without experiencing even a lick of consequences is pretty shitty. But that's not the first show that's done that, and it will certainly not be the last, especially when you want your main character to grow through forgiveness of them. It can be very easy just to have the main character forgiving them, and then that's good enough, which as a viewer, I'm like, no, it's not good enough. She deserves to suffer. But, yeah, otherwise, just love that show. Hope we get some more of it. I don't really know where it's at in that sort of realm, but yeah, very much so enjoyed it.
Did she deserve her ending more or less than Miranjo?
Oh god.
Well, I think Miranjo should have been killed, so I guess less.
Nice.
All
No.
right.
Yeah, Miranjo should have been summarily executed, so yeah.
Okay,
DJ.
moving on to my number 4. I've got Jigokuraku, or Hell's Paradise. This show fucking rules, yo. Like, oh man. Okay, so you guys know that I'm not the shonen dude. Like, that's not the shit that I watch. And I don't know if you'd classify this as shonen or if it's seinen instead. I just know that there is a tiny boy who's very strong and kills things. And boy, is he good at killing things. It is a lot darker than most shonen series that I've seen, both in terms of tone and imagery. You've got a lot of religious influence in this show, which is my fucking jam, because that's what my game is.
Mhm.
And I love that they're just fighting against these weird god monsters and people are turning into like flowers, and it's just gruesome and gory in like a really artistic and beautiful kind of way. That whole ass setting is just, it feels so unlike anything else that I've ever seen in an anime series, and it's just, I want to be there. Not literally, because it's probably the worst place that you could ever be, but I want to watch just everything that takes place there, and I need more of it immediately. My one qualm with the show is that it was just kind of like in there and out. Like, it went by way too quickly. I need 10 more cores, and I need to learn more about all of the people who are being ritualistically slaughtered in front of me. This show does not pull its punches, and it is just brutal all the way through. Also, bonus points for fucking taking place during Edo period shit, because anything involving samurai is my jam. And I know you guys have also watched this show, so if you have any comments, feel free to throw them in.
Its artistic depiction of the island and the fates of the people that are on it is the strongest point for me by far. Like, the action is very well animated, I thought, for sure, especially the fights with the demigod-like characters and how the scale can explode so quickly with that. But yeah, just dying by having flowers fucking grow out of your eye sockets and, all sorts of shit, and the bees with people faces and all of the monsters. Yeah, I think it is definitely one of the more creative landscapes of a shonen / seinen that I've had in quite some time. it very
It feels
easily
like
sucked me
reading
in.
like a 300-year-old book.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it feels old. Like this doesn't feel like a thing that was made by a current human.
yeah, it is very fantastical in all the best ways. Like it just sucked me in immediately. Like I wanted to know more about this island and them traveling into the center of it and the ecosystem of how everything survives and lives. I was like, this place rules. As someone who never has to go there.
Yeah.
I
Even
agree
like the
with-
premise of just like sending a bunch of criminals to this island where they're going to die because some dude wants a thing. Like that's such a real move. And it's just a cool thing to base a show off of.
Yeah, I agree with Cain that the world building of the island is definitely the strongest point for me, and just the fates of the characters almost aren't as important to me because I know that at least half of them are going to die. I'm just more so like, what are with these like amorphous sex having gods, and like what is their end goal, and like what is the whole purpose of this like immortality juice, and like what's actually going on here?
It feels so big. Just like they just don't know what they're getting into in a way that like I don't know if there's any amount of seasons that could really justify it or really pull the most out of what's happening there.
I feel like it should have ended up on my list, but at the same time, I'm almost dissatisfied that I don't have more, and that I kind of feel like an idiot for not reading it first, because for like years before the anime, I heard people like talking up this manga that it needs to get an anime, it needs one. So I feel like if I at some point read through it, I'm probably going to end up liking it even more than I did when I was watching it. Because for some reason, I don't know, like I enjoyed watching it, but it didn't like sink in as much as I wanted it to. But
Yeah,
like still fascinating.
I kind of feel bad for it because I feel like it was really hyped up, and MAPPA, kind of gave it the treatment that they give the big shows that they want to be the next Jujutsu Kaisen. But I think the One Core definitely heard it, and yeah, I just feel like even while it was airing, it wasn't as talked about as you'd expect from a big shonen hit. And at this point, like I don't hear people talking about it at all. So it seems like it was kind of forgotten for how much potential it had.
It's
barely
like a
saw
limbo.
anything about it in Japan too. Like I'd see like one little gotcha machine for it every once in a while, but that was it.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like it was in this limbo time frame where maybe there was like a slight amount of shonen fatigue for people that were just like, oh, I'm already like watching this and that and this. Like, I'll get to this one later. Or
The
like,
problem is it's too creative and it's too artsy. It's
I agree with
people
DJ.
can't comprehend the religious symbolism and the cool flower corpses and the weird gender fluid gods. It's too mature for the audience that they want to hit, I guess.
It also didn't have screaming humor. Big gas.
There's no comedic relief character. So.
Yeah.
Gabimaru didn't fall onto his executioner's tits and go, oops.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't dress up like a girl for an entire arc or nothing like that. So
this is why I feel the need to defend myself on this podcast.
Its compositing just wasn't as good.
I mean, that's true.
Maybe they should just make a movie and recap the first couple episodes.
Hey, that's like a meme about, people discussing animation versus compositing about Demon Slayer on Twitter. I don't make that argument. It's just true that UFO Table happens to have the best compositing in the business. Anyway, okay, so those were our number 4s. So now I'm going to count down some of my friends' top 5 lists. Actually, the first one we got is just a top 3. Didn't watch too much. So this is from Zelos. These are all going to be screen names, by the way. Number 3, Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury Season 2. Number 2, Oshinoko. Number 1, Frieren from Sync. Number 5, Zom 100. Number 4, Oshinoko. Number 3, Jujutsu Kaisen, 2nd season. And number 2, Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War, second part, Separation, I think they called it. And number 1, Frieren. From Moomin, we have number 5, my new boss is Goofy. Number 4, campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill. Number 3, Mashal. Number 2, Spy Family Season 2. Number 1, the Yuzuki family's 4 sons. From Epica, we have number 5, My Happy Marriage. Number 4, The Apothecary Diaries. Number 3, Oshinoko. Number 2, Why Ray Liotta Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
Ray Liotta?
What?
What? Why? Who?
Oh, Ray Liotta. Yeah. Yeah. Man, now I need to see that. Why Ray Liotta Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion. All right, I'm putting that down as an episode title, even though we usually don't do those kind of titles for these episodes. That's fantastic. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if it's pronounced Ray Liotta or Ryliana or what, but yeah. And number 1, Link Click Season 2. From Soul Mephist. Number 5, The Apothecary Diaries. Number 4, Jujutsu Kaisen Second Season. Number 3, Frieren. Number 2, The 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love Me. Love You, rather. Number 1, Oshinoko. From Enter Forever, we have number 5, The Apothecary Diaries. Number 4, The 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. Number 3, Oshinoko. Number 2, Frieren. Number 1, Kaguya-sama, Love is War, The First Kiss That Never Ends. Technically a 2022 anime, but none of us saw it until 2023, so we let him slide. From Horb, number 5, Why Ray Liotta. You know, why Ray Liotta ended up at the gangsters' hideout, whatever. Number 4 is The 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. Number 3, Bang Dream, It's My Go, 5 exclamation points. Number 2, The Apothecary Diaries. And number 1, The Dangers in My Heart, which I slept on, but I hear it's getting real good with the second season, so I should get back on that.
Is that the one with the short kid and the big girl?
I don't know what it's about at all, actually. And then we have Ancient One. Number 5, Tengoku Daimakyo. Number 4, Jujutsu Kaisen Second Season. Number 3, Link Click Season 2. Number 2, Frieren. Number 1, Vinland Saga Season 2. And then from my friend Mike, we have number 5, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Season 4, Part 2. Number 4, Mashal. Number 3, Frieren. Number 2, Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War, The Separation. Number 1, Attack on Titan, the final season, the final chapters. From my wife, Caitlin. Number 5, Attack on Titan, final season, final chapters. Number 4, Jujutsu Kaisen, second season. Number 3, The Apothecary Diaries. Number 2, Skip and Loafer. Number 1, Spy Family, season 2.
I feel like you gained friends. That was more than normal.
I mean,
where did they come from?
Friends is a strong word. These are people from a Discord server that I am on that I requested lists from. And I requested more strongly than last time. But I would say, in general, since joining the Discord server in mid-2022 and having met a lot of these people at cons and such, I would say more of them qualify as my friends than a year ago, sure.
Look at this guy with his friends.
I mean,
Unacceptable.
who needs 10 friends when you have, like, 1,000 fans, DJ? 10,000 fans.
10 friends when you have, like, 2 friends, which is that's how many I can have.
But they're the 2 friends that really, 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 really like you.
Yeah. Just 2 really, really good friends.
Yeah.
You made it sound like that's like a legal binding agreement. I'm allowed 2 friends. That is
Any
as
more than
much
that,
as
it
my
just
probation
becomes
officer
like a
allows.
chore. Like, you have to keep track of them and ask them how they are. I don't have time for that. I don't have to ask my fans how they are. I can just fucking exist.
I don't know what the conversion rate between friends and fans is, but I think no matter what, you definitely got us beat.
Oh, what a shame having to think about other people.
Oh, I hate it.
Gah.
All right. Anyway, those were the top 5s that I got. So, yeah, we can move on to number 3s unless anyone has any judgments to make about any of their lists.
Shout out to your friend who likes Bang Dream, if he is your friend, if he hits the criteria.
Yeah, I knew him before this Discord server, so
Okay.
I'll say yeah.
He's my favorite.
Nice. Well, everyone always bullies him for having trash taste, so he'll be very happy to hear that.
All right, so
All right.
number 3 is, I guess it's my go.
Yeah. My go. It's my go. Nice.
Yeah, so I'm glad somebody picked that up.
That's good.
Okay, so my number 3 is, I guess you would call it the second core of Blue Lock, which aired in January of this year, many, many moons ago, to the point that DJ
Wow.
forgot it was even a thing.
Yeah, I would have
was
put
this
that at
year?
number 10 if I
Yeah.
remembered
Well.
that it counted.
I don't count it, but it's fine.
I didn't count any like second core of continuation, so I didn't include that or Gundam.
Okay, so I'm gonna take this
I would have.
opportunity to load up the reasoning that I told DJ that I had for putting
He's
these
got the
on.
gun loaded. Yeah.
Yeah, I had. Yep, I was bouncing it off of him before we started recording. If they're gonna sell me the Blu-ray in multiple cores and separate them as different as different SKUs, I can count them as 2 separate things for a list like this.
That's fair.
It's fine. I allow it.
Boom! I have been vindicated.
Justified. Yeah.
So yeah, I put this on here. As everybody knows when we were watching it, is generally a very large hit. And then the second core really sort of picks things up in that we have the second and third stages of everything going, where now we've gone to the elimination round, where the teams are dynamically built and subtracted from based off of your loss or your win. And it really added to the intensity of the series, which is why I really enjoyed this particular portion of the series. We have, people like Bachira, who you thought was going to be there forever, leaving and then coming back, and then Isagi jumping around and flirting with complete elimination at one point, which, yes, we know that's not going to happen because he's the main character, but still, it is one of the few sports shows where I really didn't know what was going to happen at any time because of the way they structured these matches. Like, how many times were we going to watch Isagi's team lose and have to retool their own skills, their own dynamics, their own play structure to reach back up the ladder, which, man, is that a really enticing and addictive way to watch a show like this that normally I'm so used to watching sports anime where like you just have the team and the team is rather stable and every match is win or go home. So for the most part, you know what's going to happen unless an ass pool occurs or we just have a very long running sports series or anything like that. But yeah, this show fucking ruled. Like there was just so much action all the time. So many people, having their own individual character evolutions throughout this. Isagi bouncing in between being a cool protagonist and just a big fucking dickhead on the pitch was a lot of fun as well because you wanted him to flex a little bit. So it was cool watching him revel in devouring people's dreams and shit like that in ways that you normally don't see out of a sports protagonist. They're always, most of the time, very maybe intense on their field of choice, but can be more either docile or just generally more friendly and willing to be friends with people, when Isagi is very cool with doing whatever it takes to win and then lording it over you as you wallow in your losing sadness, which is great. We also had a really fun character arc with Baru in which he didn't learn anything at all, and it was great. He just got better at soccer and everything and he didn't learn to be a team player. He just learned to be a better version of himself, which was also cool to see because you could tell that Isagi early on really wanted to change Baru's whole personality and, fix him in a way. In the end, it had the exact opposite effect, which is really what mattered to the team because that's what made Isagi grow, is having to overcome Baru being, a fucking huge annoyance despite his skill. So the show gives you a lot of different ways that characters grow outside of just we won as a team. It's we overcame each other. I won in spite of my own team or things of that nature. So it really does a great job of balancing the individual accomplishments with the team accomplishments. And of course, Ego stokes that fire all of the time by changing up the rules or the goals for winning. And the action on the field was also very well paced and animated most of the time. There were a couple moments where it felt like I was getting sermoned at pretty hardcore, but I think that is just a piece of a sports anime. That is just a trope that always happens where you're going to have a lot of internal monologuing. But yeah, really, really love this show. I hope we get more soon. I know there's been like a spin-off manga about Nagi and some other stuff, so there's still, I think the manga's still going. I'm not super sure. But I know that the season ended off on a really interesting phase where our stakes have been kicked up even higher of a notch than what they already were. So all you have to do to get through that is just some real bad English. Just some real painful English, but it's all good. Yeah, that is my number 3.
All right, well, I hope you guys like reused segues because now it's my go.
Hey.
That's going to be the segue every time now.
No, but like this
No.
time it's literally my go. Like my number 3 is Bang Dream my go. Yeah, you got to fucking steal the thunder, so it was a lot less impactful with me announcing my number 3. But I will forgive you.
Edit out Cain saying that.
Yeah, just like the color bars sound tone in place of him. Anyway, Bang Dream, It's My Go is my number 3 of the season. And if you are going to watch any Bang Dream anime, this is the one. There are like 5 of them or 6 of them now. Like there's a fucking like multiple movies and just it's becoming complicated for people who don't know the series because they hear about it and they're like, oh, okay, what's Bang Dream? And they look up the game and it's like there are fucking 9 different bands and 45 girls and there's 7 different anime and it's just, where do I start? Start here because this is the best anime that we've gotten so far and it is so true to what a music anime should be. It's got tons of great music, which is a thing a lot of music anime now forgets to do, where they'll like make an entire music anime with one song and just keep playing the same damn song over and over. You get a new song basically every single episode in this. And it's just dealing with the formation of one band and the breakup of another, where it starts and you've got all of these girls scattered around who used to be in a band together and they had a falling out and they kind of get roped back into playing a music again by one girl who transfers into school. You got a nice foundation in that alone. But this show handles certain themes fucking so maturely and so sentimentally that it is just super, super special. There is one episode that approaches the subject of autism with more maturity than anything else I've ever seen on TV or anything like that. And it's not in your face. It's not like a like learn about autism type of thing. It's just the vocalist of the band has autism and you get to see in first person just the way she processes the world. And it's so moving and it just helps you understand different ways that people perceive reality. And it's just, oh man, it makes me emotional thinking about the show because we just don't get shit like that often, where there's so much care put into exemplifying one specific theme. And this show does that. And it really just flew under the radar because the only people who watched it are people who were already familiar with Bang Dream as a whole. And it's such a perfect standalone show that having that Bang Dream thing in there, I feel like detracts from how big it could have been if it didn't have that. It's just so well done in every single way. But the one downside that I guess people will have with this is that it's another like live 2.5D show where it's not pure 2D animation. It's all motion CG stuff. But Sanzigen does a great job with all of the Bang Dream and D4DJ properties where it's CG assisted, but it looks really fluid and true to how the game looks. But yeah, characters are great, story itself is great, and the music is great, and it's just a really enjoyable series all throughout.
All right. Now Brandon and I have the same number 3. So
No, it's our go.
Yeah, it's the next Bang Dream series. It's our go. I don't know who should go first. I'll tell you my everything I'm going to say about this is my whole philosophy on why I can rank this highly despite everyone bitching about it. Not necessarily about the show itself.
Okay. Well, you could go for that. I want to hear the spicy takes out the gate.
All right. So, yeah, our number 3, by the way, is Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. And like I said, I'm going to use this time to explain, I guess, how being a weeb has resulted in my standards being broken when it comes to rankings like this. And, like we talked about before, what is anime? What does it even mean? And just, when I rank films or TV series in general, I feel like I'm really focused on, what's the greatest piece of art from a critical perspective. And there's nothing about Japanese animation that inherently differs from any other media in that regard. But, I mean, yeah, like some of them I think you can legitimately rank among the greatest of all time, no matter the audience. Some of the greatest TV shows, some of the greatest movies are Japanese and animated. But it's just that, I don't know, I've spent so much of the past quarter century inundating myself with anime as this very specific niche of entertainment. So I have these weird biases that, I don't know, just force me to look at it differently in a context like this. But, going back to what DJ was saying about entertainment value, and actually thinking back to what I think Cain said when we did our top anime of all time, and I always use the word top when I request these lists, because I don't want to enforce any expectations of what that needs to mean. Each individual can think of it in any way that they please, and I think, you acknowledged when we did our top anime of all time that, like, by no means were your top 2 among the greatest of all time. And I appreciate that perspective, because you basically said they were the 2 that were most important to you within the context of, your anime fandom, and that's just as valid as any other interpretation. And I feel like each of us loves a lot of anime that have aspects that don't align with our tastes and standards from other films and TV series at all. So, like, the whatever the non-anime equivalent of Bang Dream is does not align with, when I get DJ's top films of all time, and it's, David Lynch films and The Godfather and Seven Samurai. It does not compute. So I think I'm kind of taking a page out of that book when I place these shonen series that may not have the most brilliant or original storytelling so highly on my lists. So, these aren't Breaking Bad or The Godfather or Avatar: The Last Airbender or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, but they don't need to be. This is just my little world, and this is the media that I wish I had 15, 20, 25 years ago. And remember how shonen anime used to be? All the favorites that we look back on with such fond nostalgia, like Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, they all had atrocious pacing, usually bottom of the barrel animation, and wildly inconsistent execution. Now, this modern era of Demon Slayers and Jujutsu Kaisens is a golden age that I could have hardly dreamed of back then. And they're now the properties that get the most lavish treatment, and they have schedules that avoid the need for stretched adaptation or filler. They have defined teams that are led by talented directors with strong visions that they maintain throughout. And it took the success of this shonen renaissance to finally get a top-notch adaptation of Bleach, and for the One Piece anime to be the best that it can be now, even if the pacing is still inevitably abysmal. And yet, the thing that I find so weird is that these series seem to get attacked more than anything for any slight misstep relative to their own impossibly high standards. Like, maybe this season of Demon Slayer could have been a few episodes tighter, but a decade ago, it would have taken all year to tell that story. Maybe 1 or 2 episodes of these 2 cores of Jujutsu Kaisen are marginally less mind-blowing than the rest, But I think the worst of this run would be the episode of any of those other old fan favorites that everyone was talking about for years. How unbelievably spoiled do we have to be to find this much fault in something this meticulously crafted? And yeah, I don't think any of these would rank at the top of my lists in manga form, but they just epitomize everything I love about their medium, which is always what I want art to do more than anything. Use your medium to its fullest. And even having said that, I do think this is the strongest material that Jujutsu Kaisen has had by any metric. I genuinely believe that Thunderclap, Thunderclap Part 2, and Transformation were the best episodes of anime in 2023. Now, of course, the seemingly impossible level of quality that Mappo delivered in the season does come at a human cost that I can't really justify. So if I factored in the ethics of production, I certainly couldn't rank this as highly, just as I couldn't rank Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse so highly on my top films of the year by that criteria. But judging the end product that we actually consume, yeah, this is where it ends up.
I think it's interesting, though. I want to touch on a lot of the things you said, but specifically the last thing about how it, judging on the moral implication of Mappa's shitty scheduling, you might not rank it as high.
Mm-hmm.
I almost, in a way, feel that I want to put it as high because of the efforts of the team getting crunched to death and getting berated online to death.
Yeah, sure.
Still being able to pull off everything they did without literally going like Evangelion episode 26 and just saying, fuck it, we're done. Like, here's a storyboard. This is what we intended. Fuck you, go away.
Yep.
Industry's too big for that now.
It is. It really is. And I think kind of getting at what you were saying about like backlash online, I think it's something, yeah, we've grown accustomed to the rigorous quality and tightness that the industry has become, that people, especially shonen anime fans, are just like expecting nothing but the best. And, you know, most of the people that enjoy these shows don't enjoy them to the analytical quality that some of us do. And like, they don't know that, you know, people are breaking their backs to the literal last minute to push an episode out and stuff like that. And they don't know anything about the process. And for a lot of people that watch a show like this or any of the Dragon Ball Supers or whatever, like any shonen property, these people are mostly just like, me want see character punch harder than other character, and like that's all it really comes down to for them. So it's like you kind of just have to muddle through all the wish-wash that people say about that stuff, because at the end of the day, we are seeing like what I personally think is one of the greater shonen arcs in the last decade. I really think that Shibuya Incident is just like such a just like insane arc, and the way that when I originally read it, I read the whole thing in a night, and my eyes were literally like fried to the back of my skull when I went to bed, and I was like, how did I do that? It was just so compelling that I couldn't put it down until I saw what happened at the end of this arc. And I think being able to see that week by week get like almost outplayed every episode was just like insane to me that can even happen. And I feel like the anime also enhanced certain aspects of it. Like, I think the Hidden Inventory Premature Death arc was much better in the anime personally, because I felt more attached to the characters. Like, I think Geto I felt a lot more sympathetic to him and like why he ends up becoming a villain. Well, in a sense, the villain, but I just like when I finished reading Shibuya arc, I just couldn't help but be like, damn, when this gets animated, it's going to be the thing that everyone's talking about. And when the first season came out, I just like implored all of my friends that had even like a speck of like they like enjoy shonen anime to any extent. I was like, please watch this show. I think the first season is great, but I'm like, just please watch this so you can get to this part of it. And they really delivered with flying colors. And yeah, I also sympathize with what you Kestrel, how you say that like it's sometimes hard to justify putting a something that is very just like rudimentary shonen up here with like, you know, some maybe more like philosophically leaning or like art house type of series that really like push the industry and push the genres and animation in new directions and like really become like classics in their own right. But I also feel
like putting Jujutsu Kaisen above Vinland Saga.
yeah, exactly. But I feel like, as we've all mentioned, it comes down to, like you said, top can mean anything on a top list, and entertainment value is a very big part of what I hope everyone's lists are things that people they enjoy. Like, I don't intend on putting something on my list if I was like, ah, yes, it was like masterfully crafted. I hated every minute of the watch, but of course it was brilliant gambit, my sir, good sir. I feel
I think DJ and I both appreciate things that make us hurt at times, but you know,
that's fair.
That's a different thing.
I love
That's
things
fair.
that make me hurt. If something
Yeah.
makes me hurt, I like it more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason
know
why
what you're
people
saying, Brett.
think. There's a reason why people think Goodnight Pun Pun's the best manga of all time. It destroys people. It destroys people.
So good.
But like you were saying, we've come to a point where people are really, they aren't grateful for what they're getting because, like you said, when we look back at shonen anime as a whole and like the arcs that last in our minds for generations, when we're thinking about like the tuning exams, we're thinking about the Saiyan saga and the Frieza saga and like all these things, they have moments that everyone remembers. Like everyone will always remember Rock Lee vs. Gaara. Everyone will always remember this or that, like Goku's first transformation. But like you said, the industry at that point was still such a machine that like the pacing and the drag, like people forget that there are literally hundreds of hours in between that they're like, oh, like why are we recapping this? Or why is it taking so long to get to this point? And
we ran out of material. Here's the filler.
yeah, exactly. And we are blessed with a full season that like fully captured exactly what it needed to for what I think is the best portion of Jujutsu Kaisen. And like we have to just be thankful that they were even able to pull it off because halfway through the season people thought it was going to just like crash and burn.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like I can justify it being our number 3 just because it's like they made it happen and fucking respect them. Yeah. Respect those animators, respect everyone involved except for the production committee. Don't respect them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like this is not a better story than Vinland Saga, and that's why Vinland Saga has been on my top 5 manga of all time for 10 plus years, and I haven't read Jujutsu Kaisen, but I highly doubt that the manga would ever be on like a top 100 because that is one aspect of it, and I think Vinland Saga is perfect in that medium. But when we're talking about anime, the adaptation has to mean something. It has to justify its existence. If you're just watching the manga with color and movement and sound, then there's no point. You need to take advantage of your medium and fully utilize it. And this is just an incredible utilization of the medium of animation in a way that so few things are. So that's why, for me, it ranks above at the moment. And yeah, a lot of that's recency bias. Ask me in a year, I'll probably have it swapped. But it was a very eventful 6 months of Thursdays being like, what the fuck are they going to do this week?
Just to take one dig at the show, I will say that I think that Specials is the worst opening of the year. In terms of the things I watched, I hated that opening.
But you are my special.
Woo! Like when it started playing, when Sukuna let Yuji back into his body, like some people they're like, oh yeah, like the lyrics and like this and that, like wow, it's so like thematically conjoined and stuff. And I was like, I like kind of bursted out laughing when that moment happened because I was like, oh, if it stayed silent and Yuji's just there screaming and like taking it in, that would have been so impactful. And then this like cutesy little pop song starts playing, and I started laughing. It was awful.
That is all anime.
Yeah.
So anime.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
very anime. I do not believe that criticism is exclusive to Jujutsu Kaisen. Every anime on planet Earth does that,
That's fair.
for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Not your favorite needle drop of the year, huh?
No.
It's not.
I will say the first opening of season 2 was excellent. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
for sure. Yeah. So that's my my spiel.
I felt like a weight lifted off.
Yeah, exactly. I've been like, I don't know, feeling guilty about liking these things for the like all year, I feel like. And so I was like, all right, I need to like, it probably sounded like I was reading a script. I did write all of this down because I needed to make sure I had every single point about this.
You needed the haters to know.
I was like, I needed to construct all of the thoughts that have been going through my head for the past year into like a cohesive argument about why I think this is valid.
You are
Yeah.
valid, Kestrel.
Thank you.
I think it's just a victim of the hype machine, and that's it. Like, if you could boil it down to its bare essence, it's people were told this is one of the greatest things to ever grace our televisions.
Yeah.
This season, and it was a strong season, and I enjoyed it. I thought it had some problems for sure. I do not agree or like the idea that we should be thankful for anything when it comes to this. That's something that I really don't agree with under any circumstances, because we are consumers and pay for the product. But
That's fair.
Brandon, is Cain the shitty fan that you were talking about?
No, because I still like the show. I do think the Nobara thing sucked, and I don't think it was the greatest thing I've ever watched on television, especially because if I can notice when animation quality drops, then it has dropped, because normally I don't fucking care, because I just like experiencing a story. But when I'm looking at frames and I can see them being dropped and someone's just pausing and not moving for a split second or so, or someone's legs or feet or hands grow unexpectedly, like in not an artistic way, then yeah, I don't blame them for it. It's just patching that over with "you should be thankful it was made anyway" is weak. So,
but I mean, what I'm saying isn't that. It's that shittiest, 5 frames that people will pick out of episodes are like the best shit that we've gotten in shonen animation in 50 years.
I don't know if I agree with that either.
That's fine.
But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was just the hype machine. It was all over that this was going to be one of the greatest things ever, and then when, depending on what your definition of that is, happened, it may not have met those things, and people on the internet with the power of anonymity can be really, really fucking mean. So that is also inexcusable. I just don't know. Like, I thought it was perfectly fine, and I liked it, and I thought a lot of the action was really good. I just felt it tripped up in some ways that weren't always necessarily due to the animation being bad or something. I thought its story beats were sometimes very weird, and pacing was odd at times, and things of that nature. But yeah, it's still super fun and enjoyable, and had some really powerful moments in it. So yeah.
Cool. And yeah, all of those shitty shonen fanboys who complain about this stuff, that's at Hellshake Brando.
Yeah, but can Gojo beat Goku?
All right. Is it time for me to read my top 5s from my fan club?
Do it up.
You mean your
All right.
friends?
Not your friend club. Those are mutually exclusive.
Not my friend club. My friend club is 2 people. Maybe. Anyway, from Vla, we've got Oshinoko at 5, Frieren at 4, Tengoku Daimakyo at 3, Vinland Saga Season 2 at 2, and Mushoku Tensei at number 1. From Life Song, we've got Danmachi Season 4 Part 2, Mushoku Tensei, whatever season we're on, Eminence in Shadow Season 2, Dead Mount Death Play, and Oshinoko at number 1. From Ziggs, we have Overtake at 5,
Nice.
Frieren at 4, Mushoku Tensei at 3, Oshinoko at 2, and Tengoku Daimakyo at 1. From Daedalus, we've got Nagatoro Season 2 at 5, Eminence in Shadow Season 2 at 4, Bofuri Season 2 at 3, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off at number 2, and Danmachi Season 4 Part 2 at number 1. From Keef, Jigokuraku at 5, Zom 100, Frieren, Insomniacs After School, and Mushoku Season 2. From Kiwi, we've got Shiguang Dailiren Season 2.
That's Link Click.
Link Click. Okay, gotcha. Undead Girl Murder Farce at 4, Jigokuraku at 3, Danmachi Season 4 Part 2 at 2, and Oshinoko at number 1. From Herpes, we've got Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Undead Girl Murder Farce at 4, Yusha ga Shinda at 3, My Home Hero at 2, and Vinland Saga Season 2 at 1. From Exhaustion, we've got The Faraway Paladin, The Lord of Rust Mountains at number 5. Tomo-chan is a Girl at 4, Eminence in Shadow Season 2 at 3, Vinland Saga Season 2 at 2, and The Ancient Magus Bride Season 2 at number 1. From TVC, we've got Helk at 5, Oshinoko at 4. Then we've got The Vexations of a Shut-In Vampire Princess at number 3, which is a show I do not know. And then we've got an even longer title, The Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady at number 2.
Wow.
And then Frieren at number 1. From Eternal Pickle, we've got Baki Hanma Season 2.
Yeah.
The Great Cleric at 4. Mashal at 3. Mushoku Tensei Season 2 at 2. And Vinland Saga Season 2 at number 1. From Blobo, we've got Shy. We've got Shy at number 5. 100 Girlfriends Who really, I don't know how many reallys there are, like you, at number 4. Mushoku Tensei Season 2 at 3, Frieren at 2, and Oshinoko at 1. And then last but not least, actually this is least because his name is also DJ, and you can't just take my name. So last and least, we have Hell's Paradise, Jigokuraku at 5, Bleach, The 1,000-Year Blood War at 4, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 at 3, Frieren at 2, and Oshinoko at 1.
The whole time you were reading those, I just picture all your fans doing the glow stick dance from Oshinoko as you write 1 million words a month.
Oh, you mean the worst part of the whole show?
Please make that our episode image.
Oh, God.
It is nice to see Overtake get some love. I was so close to putting it on this list, but there was just other stuff that I liked or thought achieved more and things. But it is nice to see some recognition for it, because it was, as you put, Brandon, a big old dark horse.
Big dark horse.
I like seeing all the Mushoku Tensei representation, because I don't think you guys have put that anywhere on any of your countdowns.
No, I don't even watch it.
Me no watch.
I think I had the second core on my top 10 of last year, or of 2022.
Mm.
I heard it once on DJ's list and once on Kestrel's friends list, but another show that made my short list awards was Heavenly Delusion, and it got the show that probably would have made my list if it wasn't stuck in Disney jail award.
Is that what happened to that show? Because I was watching it and I kind of just stopped it because I was busy. But it was good. Like when I was watching it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looked pretty good. Never got to watch it.
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can definitely see why they're your fans, because there's a lot of similarities in their lists and your list.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, now we can get into our number twos. So my number two is Attack on Titan, the final season, the final chapters. So after over a decade, Attack on Titan is finally over, guys.
Woo!
Yeah.
I still haven't watched it, so don't spoil anything.
You think I'm gonna spoil something
boy.
here? Yeah, no. I mean, well, yeah.
Do it, Kestrel.
No,
Dude.
we'll do an episode focusing on the full series when all of us have finished it. But I'll briefly mention a few things about this final stretch. And if I were to consider the two special separately, the first one would definitely be the one that's on my list. That's still like Attack on Titan at the peak of its greatness. It's got the exhilarating action, the emotional resonance, the visceral tragedy. The second one still has plenty of that as well, but the ending is what everyone talks about, and it's true that it's not as strong as you'd hope from the series. However, I did read the manga version right after I watched it, and if anything, that makes me appreciate the anime as a whole that much more. It's always been a brilliant adaptation that enhances the source material to an insane degree. There's no denying that the real brilliance of most of Isayama's storytelling, that's at the heart of the whole series. Like, he's had incredible storytelling throughout. But I think so much of what makes Attack on Titan a great anime is purely from the adaptation. I'd even say that most of the aspects that they improve upon in the anime were kind of awful in the original manga throughout the entire series. And I feel really bad for Isayama, because he wrote himself into this very complicated corner that had no happy ending and very little chance of a satisfying ending. But unlike, say, George R.R. Martin, he doesn't get to take 15 or 20 years off when he has writer's block. He's got to churn out 50 pages of content. Yeah. He's got to churn out 50 pages of content every month, whether he has an idea in his head or not. And I think he just buckled under the pressure for the final leg of this marathon, and he gave his beloved series a relatively terrible ending.
To what you said about him not like buckling, he literally never missed a monthly deadline for the 10-year run, except for in the last year, because the magazine fell on like a holiday and it didn't publish on that month. So like he literally didn't stop.
Yeah, it's insane. And it was even longer in the manga. It was 12 years for the manga to complete, only 10 for the anime. Yeah, so the anime was never going to change the manga ending completely. They would have had shitstorms either way, but probably even more if they did that. So I just have infinite respect for how deftly it managed to expand, clarify, and alter that ending in a way that, combined with the strength of the direction, animation, and everything else, it turned it into an ending that at least feels like it belongs in the same series as the rest of the anime, without fundamentally changing what happened. And Isayama was also involved in those tweaks, which hopefully gave him some closure after having regretted how poorly his manga ending turned out, which is at least as much of a victory in my book. So maybe this wasn't the pinnacle of Attack on Titan, but it was so far from the nightmare that we were led to expect that I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, people made this sound, and again, haven't watched the ending, but people made it sound like it was the worst ending ever written, which I struggled to believe.
I think the ending in the manga has a case for being one of the most disappointing endings given the quality of the rest of the series. I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it pro-Nazi like everybody else says that
No,
it is?
of course it's not. It's fucking the most anti-fascist shit ever from beginning to end.
But the people on Twitter say that it's pro-Nazi.
I don't know, that reaction makes it feel pretty pro-Nazi.
That's exactly what a Nazi would say.
Yeah, exactly. Suspicious.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah, they really, like you said, like they really couldn't have like changed it too much. I think they did the right thing by just enhancing it. They gave it a little more room to breathe, and this isn't really a spoiler, but like one of the last conversations that happens
Mhm.
gets a little bit more fleshed out. And I feel like that's something that the manga struggled with, is that like because of its page count and the swiftness of the wrapping up dialogues, like Isayama literally had to create like an epilogue chapter to kind of even like round it out some more, and people like of course still weren't satisfied, but it's like it needed a little bit more after that initial end. But yeah, no, people literally went pitchforks in torch mode like the second the fucking last chapter dropped. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it was bizarre to read it because it was like, why did you end it here? Like, you clearly wanted this to be several chapters. Were you just like that done and you just gave up? Like, I could see him being that burnt out, but it felt so much like he had so much more to say than a chapter worth at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as something like how Togashi kind of like wrote off the end of Yu Yu Hakusho, but I feel like it's in a similar vein of him just being like, I am so fucking done, dude. So yeah, I still respect the guy. It's like he literally gave me like one of the greatest stories I've ever read for over a decade straight.
Definitely.
And it's like, how do you what property has ever given you an ending as satisfactory as like years of amazing content? Like
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad, that's probably one of the few. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. No, it's very rare.
It
It's
is.
extremely, especially with something that grabs you as much as the beginning of Attack on Titan does. Like, to maintain that throughout, especially with all the crazy twists and turns in his plot, and then to come up with an ending that would satisfy everyone. No, it's impossible. I knew it was not going to be a perfect ending because he did not give himself an opportunity to make one.
Yeah. Literally the fandom became like genocide sympathizers versus save the world team, and it's like it's like literally the fandom is like becoming the series, and it was pretty ironic. Like, what do you want?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like what I was saying about Vinland Saga, right? Where it's like, if you thought that the fights were the point, then you're the problem. You're what the series is addressing.
Yeah.
You're the fucking idiot Vikings who think that violence solves everything.
Yeah. And that's why there's people that are so butthurt that they create their own endings, like Attack on Titan Requiem.
I think that's the second consecutive episode you've brought that up.
I have. It needs to be known that people are stupid.
I mean, I think all you've done is given whatever that is more views.
Yeah, that's true. Probably true. But it's okay, because we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about peak fiction, which in my number 2 slot comes out to be Pluto. And now, this was tough because I feel like Pluto on my initial draft was my number 1, and I feel like because of binge model and my own inability to like watch it at a good enough pace, I wasn't able to fully enjoy it as much as I wanted to, but it gets this spot because the source material is one of my favorite stories of all time, and this is like one of those lifelong anime projects that you just like wait for and wait for and wait for, and even after it's announced, you wait for and wait for, and you're like, is it even real? Like, I don't think it's real. And then it happens, and you're like, I still can't believe it's real until I hit the play button. And then you're watching it, and it's there, and it looks great. It perfectly captures Urasawa's style, and the thing is that the story very much is carrying it, because I mean, Urasawa is just like untouchable in writing dramas, mystery thrillers. He is just like, he literally takes one of the, the flagship of anime. He takes the god Tezuka's Astro Boy and one of its, more dark and intriguing arcs, and like turns it into something almost completely different because of the way it's framed for the time it came out. And, it has lots of allegories that were relevant when it came out, the turn of the century, the wars in the Middle East, and now with the anime dropping.
I don't think there's any connection there. I think you probably are just reading into it. I don't think there's any similarities.
You don't think so?
I don't really know where you're getting that from.
Yeah, no. I mean, next you're going to tell me that Apothecary Diaries is like based on China or something. Or like Spy Family is based on Germany. Yeah, you're kind of out of it.
You're telling me Berlin is its own thing that is original?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just think it's even more relevant now, when the anime is coming out with AI talk and more conflicts in the world that are happening. And no, I mean, this is just such a perfectly crafted show, and it's perfectly the 8 episodes. They capture all 8 volumes, and I think because of the nature of it being like a mystery thriller, there are some pacing issues, and like the animation it looks kind of flat at moments, but there are also some moments that look really breathtaking, and I just love the story, and I'm just amazed that it actually happened. We actually got the Pluto anime, and it's here, and it's good.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hop in.
Yeah, so now we need the 20th Century Boys anime, so get on that, Maruyama.
I was going to say another 10 years for that, and then Monster remake in another 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. That is, I got to talk to Maruyama for brief little minutes there at AX about this series. Unfortunately, he didn't really answer my question about AI and how it compares to like our current environment. But we basically talked about him establishing a new studio for this project and how it took him 10 years to create it. And yeah, that's just super fascinating. And this is his kind of life project because he is the only person who worked with Tezuka back when he was making Astro Boy, and then adapted all of Urasawa's manga that got anime adaptations into their anime adaptations, as he was running Madhouse for those decades. So, it's the perfect culmination of his career. And also, I kind of used that philosophy with showing it to my mom, who, for those of you who don't remember, when I lived at home, she watched and read most of the anime and manga that I got. That would be like our thing. Like we'd watch anime together, and I'd leave whatever volumes of manga I got on the table, and she would just read them. And it actually goes back much, much further than my existence, because she happened to be watching Astro Boy whenever it aired on American TV in 1963 when she was 9 years old. So that, and the fact that probably her favorite manga series of all time are Monster and 20th Century Boys, and Monster is one of her favorite anime of all time, just made this like the perfect culmination of her interests and experience with anime throughout the past 60 plus years to show her. And she happened to be coming to visit like right after it dropped on Netflix, so I immediately rewatched the whole thing with her, because it was like, yeah, this is just the perfect audience for this series. Like, who else was watching Astro Boy in 1963 or was working with Tezuka in 1963 and then followed all of Urasawa's creations and was like the biggest fan or the biggest collaborator. So yeah, my mom and Masao Maruyama are the the pillars of Pluto the anime.
I love the way the stars align there.
And also, Brandon, you need to read Monster and 20th Century Boys, because
I'm getting on
I love Pluto. I love the manga series to death as well, and I think that both of those series are infinitely better.
Yeah, I'll get to that when I find the time. But I think you also make a good point that of course your mom has a lot of entryways to make this like a show that she would really enjoy. But I think just in general, with Pluto being on Netflix and with Urasawa style being very like worldly, and it does like Pluto doesn't, and Urasawa style in general doesn't have the like pitfalls of being too like anime like that kind of like scares away people that don't usually watch anime. So I feel like it being on Netflix is just a perfect entry point, and I feel like Pluto should be considered one of those like baby's first anime. Just like if you want to get into anime, watch something like this and see what it's all about. Not
Excellent
just for
dub.
kids.
Excellent dub too, which helps.
I'll have to rewatch it in the dub.
Yeah. And, for people who did watch the Monster dub, unfortunately, it didn't get added to Netflix when the Japanese version did. But for people who did watch that, this dub has tons of callbacks to it. So, like, it's directed and written by Patrick Seitz, who also did the Monster dub. And, Urasawa reuses a lot of character designs from one work to the next. So every time he reused a character design from Monster to Pluto, which is a lot, they cast the same actor in the dub.
That's funny.
Yeah, so like, Epsilon is Johan, for example, for main characters. Yeah. So, yeah, check that out if you are into dubs.
That's cool.
All right. We're moving on.
Cain, you said you had something to say about this?
Yeah. I'll keep it pretty short because you guys kind of covered a lot of it. And especially Brandon, I agree with this is a good show for someone to watch who just really appreciates well-crafted science fiction and everything. Also, Dr. Tenma got a big old glow up in this. He looks great. And I was like, I want to look like that when I get older. Nice, like, fluffy pompadour and cool sunglasses all the time. But yeah, it was really good. The only thing that I hear from my friends who watch it that is something that is just unavoidable is the fact that the episodes are an hour long can make it harder sometimes to find the time versus a 20-minute episode. But man, it's worth it for sure. It looks great, and it isn't as hard to follow as I thought it would have been for the most part. Like, it has a crafted world and story, and uses flashbacks with deft and skill, so it's not just here comes another flashback monologue and another flashback monologue and etc. So yeah, and if I could recommend a way to watch it, you could almost, especially early on, think of the episodes as like their own isolated things, so you don't have to feel like you gotta watch it all the way through. Like North number 2 story is just that. And then you can just watch North number 2 story, and then you move on, and you'll see a gradual coming together of the overarching plot. But maybe that helps with the approachability in that way, is that it isn't 8 hours of really dense, in-depth story that you have to be at 100% attention all of the time.
Yeah, I'd almost recommend not watching episodes back to back.
No, it is a lot.
It's dense, and like I said, like getting through the series is probably one of the reasons like it wasn't number one, is that like I would like watch an episode or two in a week and then like take a few weeks off and then watch the next episode. But you're right, they do work very well in their own just like little episodes.
Yeah, as the show carries on and you get into episode like 6, 7, and 8, that becomes a little more difficult because all the events start culminating together and everything. But when they're kind of the individual vignettes on each of the robots doing their stuff, it makes a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah. And no, I didn't put this up so high just because there's a character named Brando, okay?
I mean, not because there's a character, but because he's the greatest warrior of all.
It's true.
Now, I think for full immersion, to empathize with the creative process behind the show, I would recommend taking 10 years to watch it.
Yeah, for real. I also I agree with what you said, Cain, that like it wasn't very hard to follow despite it being like, they do try to like lead you on, and like they keep the mystery pretty vague the whole time, but at the same time, when there's a big reveal, it doesn't feel like it was a whiplash moment or an ass pull. It's just they're like leading you on, and they're like, come on, you can get the breadcrumbs, you know where we're going with this, and it just feels satisfying whenever we get to a new conclusion and open a new batch of questions.
Yeah,
That's like Urasawa's bread and butter. He's just like so good at writing it.
Yeah, it proceeds very logically, and I didn't feel like any one particular reveal was a leap in that logic where I had to like pause an episode and think back, okay, well, how did this happen? Well, they didn't show this, so this must have happened off screen somewhere, and all this. Like the puzzle pieces all came together very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Okay.
so if that's it for Brandon's number 2, we have
The rest of you.
You got this one in common.
a big old combo
Yeah.
coming up here.
Oh
so.
yeah, and Brandon's number 1. So
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Our number 2, Cain and I's number 2, as well as Brandon's number 1, is Vinland Saga Season 2. A series we have already talked about at a couple points. And yeah, most of the things that I wanted to say about this show have already been said. But I think the one thing of somewhat substance that I can add is a brief comment on how I think that this season was a lot less consistent than the first season. Whereas like the first season, it was pretty fantastic the whole way through. This season had several episodes that were just way better than the rest of them. And I don't think that makes the rest of the show not good, as evidenced by me putting it at my number 2 of the year. It's just a thing I noticed. I still like Vinland Saga a lot, and I think that the fucking Valhalla Hell episode was the coolest shit I saw all year. With probably the best animation I saw all year as well. That was just fucking beautiful.
Yeah, it was a real pinnacle moment.
It was so intense and just like came out of nowhere. But yeah, I think it got the point across, and I'm really invested in Thorfinn as a character now, because like Kestrel said earlier, he's a fucking little bitch for the entire first season of the show, and the amount of change that he's gone through is absurd. And I guess that he has that in common with my number 1, which we'll get to soon. But Vinland Saga Season 2, way different than Season 1, not in a bad way. They're both excellent. They're just completely different shows. And as someone who hasn't experienced the manga in any capacity, I'm interested in seeing how it continues to tread down that path.
Yeah, I'm generally in the same way. We talked about it so much, but I don't have a whole lot to add other than Thorfinn just has such an incredible character arc, and it'll be very interesting to see how he continues to carry on and being a pacifist in a world where being a pacifist generally means certain death, if not incredible dishonor within their culture and community. So it will certainly not be an easy path that he has chosen. Especially given the fact of his past and how strong he is as a character. Like, I doubt he'll be able to stay a pacifist since he had to break it already, but there's always a discussion to be had between pacifism and then like self-defense and things of that nature. When, push comes to shove and the rubber meets the road. But yeah, that like Hell episode and everything was one of my favorite moments of anime of the year. Just that whole sequence and everything. So I pretty much just have that to add, but very, very much enjoyed it and glad it got made, especially when Kestrel first let us know that this is more of a Western show at this point.
One thing I'm somewhat concerned about going into season 3 is that I feel like there is a lot of weight on Thorfinn to sort of carry the show now. And I get that he's the protagonist. That's like kind of his job. But season 1, you've got characters like Ashalad who are super interesting to just try and pick the brain of. And I feel like season 2 didn't have anybody in the side character department that it was even remotely as interesting as some of the season 1 side characters. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Einar, like, in general. I feel like a lot of his, apart from the way he's introduced, which was great, but I feel like after that, a lot of his character was just kind of chasing after the girl and trying to be a good man. And that was like, it didn't seem like he had a lot of depth to him, especially when compared to someone like Thorfinn, who's ridiculously deep. It was just, I don't know if it just hasn't really gone into enough depth concerning Einar, but I don't think he's as strong as the sidekick character needs to be for something like this.
But even if Thorfinn doesn't necessarily have as strong of a supporting cast around him all the time, think about how interesting Knut's story became in a very equally transformative but opposite direction from Thorfinn's.
Knut's great and fantastic character, but didn't have a lot of screen time, unfortunately. Like, I would love more of him because he's super interesting. And I like the whole, like, contrast between him and Thorfinn, like two dudes who sort of went down completely different paths, who are different sides of the same coin, if you will. And yeah, their coexistence is neat. But
and I imagine this won't be the last time they clash either.
I don't know.
I say their goals are completely mutually exclusive.
Yeah, but Bran probably has some more to say since it's his favorite of the season.
I mean,
The year.
What more can I say that hasn't already been said? The farmland boys stay winning. You want Thorfinn to kill people? Thorfinn says, I refuse. I have no enemies. Yeah, but I really don't have that much more because it's one of those shows that we talked about so much, even during our like seasonal discussions, that like there really isn't much more we can add to kind of surmise like why it's been so good. I do agree with what you said, DJ, that season 1 was more consistent throughout, whereas season 2 had a lot of peaks and valleys. And I think for me, putting it at number 1 is very much carried by the source material. And just like, this is like one of the few shows that the weekly schedule may have hurt it because of the pacing, the slower pacing. And I feel like when I originally read it in like the 2-ish like thick volumes that it comes in the English release, that I was able to read it at a pace that was much more satisfactory than watching it weekly. But I still think that it's the story that's being told of the culmination of Thorfinn's transformation that is just so powerful for the second season. And I think that the quality of the first season is just bolstered even higher once this season comes to an end as well. And anything else that hasn't been said, maybe like the voice actors all were killing it. I agree that like Einar wasn't always my favorite character, and sometimes I feel like the way they wrote him in the second season kind of felt a little different than how he came off in the manga.
Yeah.
But I do think that his voice acting was stellar, and Thorfinn as well, because this whole season we mostly heard his monotone-ass voice, aside from like his dream screams. But when he had like his moments of like letting it out, it was very powerful. And there's so many characters that are interesting. Like you said, Knut's story is super compelling to see the opposite side of the coin of his growth, but also of the youngest son of Kettle's family. I think DJ didn't really enjoy that character as much. Yeah, but I for one really enjoyed his story, and I feel like he's another necessary type of character in the dynamic of like the father son story that's being told throughout Vinland Saga. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree that season 2 maybe consistently didn't have the highest quality throughout, but like the peaks and the culmination of Thorfinn's character, like far and away, are more impactful than anything else that I saw this year. So I felt like I had to put it at number 1.
And I think I mentioned this at the time, but just going back to how this series delves into, personality types and philosophies and moral and ethical dilemmas that definitely existed in humans 1,000 years ago, when society was very different. I appreciate all of the characters, even if they're like, seem annoying or like, like you hate them, because I think that they're all just written in such a way that they are a perfect, like, singular, unique perspective of the kind of human that would exist in Viking society that you never hear about and would struggle in that kind of society. And so Ketil is that, his kids are that, everyone else on the farm is that, everyone in Canute's camp is that. And they're all different from each other in a unique enough way that each of their stories gets to, make this unique, compelling argument of, well, what about when this kind of person had to come up against, Viking standards at the time? So that's one of the things I appreciate the most. And of course,
Yeah.
Thorfinn, as the protagonist, is the extreme example of it because he is the most now active pacifist, finally understanding what his father tried to tell him all those years ago after many, many years of exactly the opposite.
And I think you mentioned it a little earlier in this episode, Kestrel, but it just feels so unfortunate that I feel like Vinland Saga's anime hasn't cast as wide a net as like it should.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be maybe it's a timing thing, maybe it's the decline of like the way even just like the way a show like Game of Thrones ended. Like, did people just all of a sudden not care for these kinds of stories? Or I feel like it has such a, because it's similar to like Attack on Titan and what we said about Pluto, it has this draw that Western audiences like love to consume, and I feel like it just like, I don't know, didn't catch. I feel like the first season was on like Prime Video or something, but like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, similar to Hell's Paradise, where it's like there was just we're in some kind of time capsule where like Vinland Saga isn't as big as it should be. And
I think it's a marketing thing. Like, people who watch anime watch Vinland Saga.
Yeah.
fair.
But they need to capture the people who don't, and they didn't really market it toward them at all. And
Right.
like, no one found out about it.
That's true. Even when it came to Netflix, like it got nothing.
Yeah, that is definitely the problem because the anime fans who want their big shonen battles leave Vinland Saga disappointed in large part, and the huge American drama fandom that this could immensely capture it's not really on their radar enough. So that's definitely a huge part of the problem.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No, we love Thorfinn. This is a Thorfinn fan club now.
Yeah, well, while we're on the topic of sad blonde boys, my number one of the season is Mushoku Tensei Season 2, the erectile dysfunction arc.
That's what I thought this fucking was. I just forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah. If there's any show that can take erectile dysfunction and turn it into a poignant, moving story arc, it's Mushoku Tensei. I think that, like, I already liked this series, and I can't remember if it was number one in the past for me. But I liked this season a lot more. In the sense that it was extremely slow-paced character drama, which is what I live for. And you've just got this dude who, he's a super pervert, and you take away his ability to get an erection, and it kind of makes him have to completely change his life around. It's, conceptually a weird thing to tell a story about, and on paper it just sounds silly and ridiculous, but it is a really realistic look at trauma and depression. And I think that it was handled in the most mature way that Mushoku Tensei can handle something, which is obviously going to be laced with a lot of dark humor and shit like that. But overall, I think it was such an expertly told story of trauma and trying to overcome it, while at the same time touching up on some of the shit from the first season, like some of the loose ends, particularly things with Sylphie and just her character in general, seeing the changes that she's had to go through and what she's been doing while Rudy's been on the opposite side of the world. Just the world of Mushoku Tensei as a whole just feels so colossal. And I know that's because it is. It's a huge ass long story, and I'm glad that they are not rushing through it. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't really feel like much was accomplished at all in the 12 episodes we got. It was just Rudy's depressed and traumatized and has to overcome that. And I think that was the perfect way to handle this situation. But yeah, good show.
I cannot say I was expecting a no boner show to have anything truly serious going on outside of that. So at least they did some psychological exploration.
It's super serious. Yeah, like I said, on paper it sounds ridiculous, but
you also wouldn't get that
a real reaction to what happened, how the problem arose and how he eventually makes it go away. He's learning things about himself, where it's the one thing that he's basically held on to through his entire journey, his perversions, is gone. And it's well, fuck, what am I? Do I not even like girls? What's happening? It was such a cool idea to explore, because that's not a thing a lot of shows will touch on. No one wants to put an erectile dysfunction arc in their anime, but this is the show that you're gonna get that from.
Action anime.
Yeah, it's just so different and so real and raw, and I loved it.
Yeah, you definitely don't get that either with the way that I learned what this season was about, which is mainly through my Instagram feed, and then there'd be a clip from it, and I'd be like, ah, yes, this show.
No, it's it's sad. That show is just people give it shit for some of the content in there, which, fair, whatever. But it has so much to say, and it's so serious and dark and dramatic, and just a great story all around. Rudy is one of my favorite protagonists ever, probably. He's so complex, but he's got his simplistic tendencies, and he likes having boners. Who doesn't? And
yeah, true. Universal.
Thorfinn has no enemies. Rudy has no erections.
Yeah. That was his Valhalla or his hell.
Wow.
Dreams every night trying to climb out.
Who's suffering more?
Why can't I come?
All right. I think we need to move on from Oh boy. All right. So the remaining number ones are Cain and I, and we have the same number one. And that is Frieren Beyond Journey's End. I went first for the last tie, so you can go first for this one.
All right, cool. This show is perfect. Case closed.
Agreed.
Checkmate,
Agreed.
anime watchers.
Agreed. No, I don't like. There is so much to say about Frieren and how much I'm enjoying basically every single aspect of it, from its lush art scene to its incredible soundtrack outside of the opening themes, which I don't particularly care for, but that's more of a me thing. Its exploration of emotional validity and loss and grief, and trying to perpetuate someone's legend through memory and conversation and storytelling, rather than things like, statues and books, considering the show touches on many times. Like, legend is more when people talk about you and remember you, not so much the statues that you leave up. And there's just so much good that this show does that I look forward to seeing the episode basically every single week that it airs. And I cannot remember the last time I've felt that way every week about a show, because most times in the seasons, even shows I really do like, there is at least one episode where I'm watching it more out of an obligation to continue, at least for a little. But man, Frieren is one of those shows where I'm just always looking forward to it. I recommend it every chance I get to people, because this is also a show that you do not need to like anime to like it. It is just so incredibly solid and balances those precious moments of peace and happiness through the copious amounts of montages that the show uses, with the underlying current of, just sadness that it has the whole time, since the original journey is over, and Frieren is just trying to sort of process it, perhaps for the first time in her life, what people meant to her on this journey, as opposed to her many other years, and even some of the people that she didn't think too much about before, is she's now approaching with fresh perspectives. And obviously there's going to be a lot of bittersweet moments on there and everything, but the show is just so good at balancing all of that, and every episode has such nice little touches that it is hard to really say much of anything negative about it at all. But yeah, I think it is definitely shaping up to be one of my favorites of all time, if not the season. I don't really have any negative notes on it, which is unusual, because I always try to nitpick everything that I watch anymore in an attempt to feel pseudo-intellectual about it. But man, this shit fucking rules. Like, it just slaps on all levels.
True.
No notes.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with all that a lot. I don't know if I can express it any better than the fact that just hearing you talk about it and having like scenes flash in my mind from the show was like moving me emotionally. Like, that's the kind of show it is. And yeah, just to get into like how I approached the show originally, this is something that I do every season for the past like probably decade or more. I look at like all the companies and staff involved in upcoming series, see if any of them have worked on any of my like previous favorites, any of my favorite staff members or studios or anything, have anything coming up. Every time that something comes up, I get super excited about it, and every time I get super disappointed by the result, because it's either the source material isn't as good, or the rest of the team isn't as good, or they didn't get the resources they need, or they're just not at the top of their game, or I really just realized that they were never what really made those other anime so great in the first place. So Frieren came along, and it had like the most unbelievable team, from the studio to the musical artist to the composer to the director to the writer. And so I tried so hard not to get my hopes up after so long of disappointing myself. But then the impossible happened. Not only did none of those elements let me down, but Frieren showcased each of the creative forces at the peak of their respective ability. And I had already heard good things about the manga, so at least they had good material to work with. But I don't know, the craftsmanship of the production just blows my mind each and every week. It's such a beautiful series in every way. And I talked at length about how far and above any other studio Madhouse sits when we did our top studio ranking last year, and this just widens that gap by yet another massive gulf. Like you said, just rich, lush, painting-like aesthetics that, you know, really evokes the story's pathos so poignantly. And then on top of that, it'll just turn into the best animated action series on TV when the plot calls for it. And I'd say that even in a season with Jujutsu Kaisen, like it had in competition with it. Everything about the music is incredible. Like you mentioned, I do love all the theme songs. I can get how the first one isn't necessarily the most fitting tonally, but I do love the song and the sequence. I think the ending in particular is beautiful, and the way that they're using the second half of it for the second core is just
that fucking got me too.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is the second half of the song, and it means something entirely different.
Exactly. All the lyrics. Also, Miele had another song that they used as an insert song in some of one of the later episodes of the first core, which I just thought was perfectly utilized. And then, of course, the score itself, Evan Call, who also worked on those Miele songs for the series, I think he outdid his own heights from Violet Evergarden.
What?
Oh yeah, like just so much of it. Like it has this classic fantasy and medieval kind of style. A lot of the European styles that would go into that over the years. But it just approaches it with such a refreshing sincerity, and just the emotional weight behind it is just so impactful, so powerful.
I've not once felt like I was just listening to a Ren fair.
Right.
It's so interesting hearing people talk about this show as someone who's only watched one episode of it, because just that one episode was it just was normal. Like, it didn't seem remarkable, but everyone thinks it's like the greatest thing ever. And I need to know like what happens. Like, how did this? Yeah, I want to watch it. It's just it fucking aired at the least convenient time ever for me. But
yeah, that first episode spends a lot of time just setting up a lot of foundational characters that come up quite frequently. Even after they're long gone, you'll just learn more about them through flashbacks of the journey, and then how they have rippling effects through time, even a life as long as Frieren's.
Right.
Just given like the concept of the show and who Frieren is as a character and the capacity in which she exists, I can sort of understand, I guess, directions the show will head in, similar to things that I'm sure Makia probably brought up. And that's like shit that I love. Like, that's the idea of just being not immortal, but having a completely different grasp on how time works from all of these other people that you're surrounded with. It's a cool concept. And I want to see more of it.
Yeah, she's functionally immortal.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as the confines of the show.
Yeah.
And it's brought up all of the time, and you just see different aspects and perceptions of it, and you learn to understand why she closes herself off.
I mean,
emotionally, and it makes the moments where she allows herself to feel vulnerable even more powerful, because you realize the weight behind the action that she's taking and allowing herself to feel, knowing what the end consequences of it will inevitably be.
I think that's the reason that I felt so unmoved after the first episode, because you don't really get much of a glimpse into her feeling anything. Like, she cries for a couple seconds at a funeral, and that's it. And I don't know, she just felt like very robotic in episode 1, and I want to see that torn down, if you will.
Yeah, well, it's used as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to if you were fucking essentially immortal. Like, there's no way. Because if you're just feeling things all the time, you're going to be miserable all the time. Everyone you love is gone.
Yeah, I feel like there's lots of shows and even just strictly anime that deal with, time spans that are like epically long and stuff like that. But I feel like none of them can capture the melancholy of time passing the way Frieren does. And I think it's interesting that despite her being like 1,000 years old or whatever, the only like passage of time that matters in what we're experiencing of her story is post Himmel time. You know, it's like instead of like a BC to AD, we have AH. We just have after Himmel and where that goes from there.
Well,
Yeah, perfect.
It allows you to. It allows the world to breathe in that way. In other shows that do have this, they make you painfully aware of the time passing, and are sometimes feel quick to jump to that inevitable conclusion. But I think so far in Frieren, we've only spent 6 years, maybe, with one big time skip in between there, and a lot of the journeying has been days at a time, or weeks, or maybe months. And to the show's credit as well, it never really directly mentions that, oh, by the way, Frieren lives this long and all these people are going to die. She brings it up offhandedly in other occasions, like, I just wanted to come to this village to talk to you before you died, knowing that she won't see this person ever again.
Yeah.
And it can feel timeless in that way, because you don't know, that person could be dead tomorrow or in 70 or so years. She just treats it in such a way that it allows the world to breathe rather than just constantly hitting you over the head with that fact in a very ham-fisted way. I don't know. I know that it's happening, but it allows you to sort of get comfortable in it and allow yourself to sort of be washed away in the way that she experiences life, which is really great.
Yeah, it helps that like the supporting cast really gives her that structure, because as we've seen from a lot of the way she goes about like researching or looking for things, like she could spend years just kind of like doing her own thing and like not even bat an eye, whereas like a character like Fern, who is very organized and assertive, is going to be like, no, Frieren, we can't like keep looking for this thing because you're going to take a whole year and like we don't have time to do this stupid little thing you want to do.
Yeah, I like how it treats it like a joke sometimes too, and brings like levity where Frieren will just say something, I think I'll just stay here for like a decade or so.
Yeah.
And you don't know if she actually means it or not because of the way that she experiences time. So yeah, Fern has to reel her in order to keep her schedule regimented. Which that is a fantastic relationship too, Fern and Frieren's, how they become familial, especially in the last episode or two. There are some really big moments between the two of them where Frieren really embraces what she believes her role with Fern to be and allows herself to do it because she wants to, not because she feels like that is my obligation or that is what Heiter wanted me to do. I'm, doing these things with Fern and comforting her when she's sick and holding her hand because I care for her. And, I'm essentially her mother at this point. That's the vibe I really got out of one of those scenes, which is, she's embracing it and learning to live and love Fern for what she is, despite the fact that she's a human and grows very, very quickly compared to her. So it's, once again, just another one of those things where it is all the more impactful because Frieren obviously is very aware of the situation and chooses to allow herself to be vulnerable in that way. Yeah, super good.
Yeah, so I was about halfway through my number one there. So let me try to remember where I was. I was talking about music, right? I talked about the composer. Who else? So the director, Keiichiro Saito. That's a name I hadn't heard ever a year and a half ago. And then he blew me away in fall 2022 by turning Bocchi the Rock into a series that I felt a profound connection to. and then he did the same to an even greater extent 1 year later. And yeah, I think so much of the series is in its tone. Like you said, how he lets the series breathe and have the quiet moments that don't detract from the big climaxes, just make them more effective. And yeah, Frieren's entire worldview depends on how slowly life progresses for her, and he managed to make us feel that with all the little nuanced meditations on the mundane nature of wandering around for centuries. The writing was obviously strong from the source, but the adaptation blends with all these other elements and paces it perfectly, makes the characters feel so genuine, their interactions are so authentic. They can be frivolous, they can be hilarious, they can be dramatic, they can be cool, they can be emotional wrecks. And we empathize with them so effectively because of how much care is put into their characterization, the storytelling, the build-up at every moment. So it's such a moving story, not because huge events are happening, but because the themes it explores are just so universal and so deeply realized, even if it has this fantastical subtext superficially, or I guess supertext for it to be superficial. But it literally subverts the construct of a fantasy party adventure to the extent that its entire premise is predicated on the grand adventure already being over and the Demon King already being defeated. And I think if anything, that seemingly generic fantasy setup is just another one of the challenges for it to tell such a grounded story. But instead of being a challenge, it just uses it to enhance everything that it is exploring. Particularly Frieren's ruminations of life from that unique perspective of someone who sees countless generations come and go. And it even, embraces those trappings to consider how certain archetypes and tropes would function in a realistic examination of, social dynamics. Just like Vinland Saga does, how, personality types and moral quandaries and all that would exist in a time that actually happened that we don't necessarily think about. This is how it would exist given these other kind of rules that have been set forth by, your Tolkiens and your D&Ds throughout the decades of fantasy media and fiction. And yeah, just everything about it just so meaningful, so understated, and yeah, it's already a strong candidate for one of the greatest anime of all time, and we're only halfway through.
Damn. I'm excited to continue this show.
And in like Oshinoko, they did start us out with 4 episodes at once. They were 4 individual episodes. I think maybe in Japan they were presented all together. But unlike Oshinoko, you can just watch the first episode, but I think it was kind of deliberate for them to give us 4 episodes right off the bat so that we could kind of see some of the different aspects it would explore without having to rush anything.
Yeah, I was unaware of that when I watched the first episode.
Yeah. And because of that, we also get an extra long 2 cores. It's going to be 28 episodes right off the bat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so far everything is just so masterful and just keeps getting better. So cannot wait.
All right.
Cool. Anyone
did it.
have any final thoughts on any of that? Anything we've talked about?
Honorable mention to Blue Lock that I didn't put in the countdown because I didn't think it counted.
Cool.
Which is weird because I've been able to do this every time.
It's the restriction in your own mind that's stopping you.
Yeah, you need to break free from those confines. Allow yourself to put whatever you want down.
It's true.
I put Clannad After Story as my top anime of the year.
I mean, Bran did try to put One Piece at number 1, and I stopped him.
I will say that despite us never including One Piece in our seasonal discussions, which is fair, and I choose not to put that in our seasonal discussions list, I think the anime that defined 2023 is One Piece, and I will not accept any disposition.
Well, hopefully we'll get to include the One Piece at number 1 in a year.
There we go.
That'll be our consolation. All right, let's aggregate some of these and see what came out on top overall. So first, we're gonna do just the 4 of us here. Our top 10s all aggregated. So if anyone has not experienced one of these, number 1 gets 10 points, so on. So with that, we have number 10, Skip and Loafer. Number 9, Attack on Titan, final season, the final chapters. Number 8, Oshinoko. Number 7, number 7, Mushoku Tensei 2. So obviously we've gotten to the point where we're past the ones that only one person has included.
Yeah.
That gets number 7 from 10 points from its number 1.
Mhm.
So now we have number 6, Jigoku Raku, Hell's Paradise. Number 5, The Apothecary Diaries. Number 4, hold on. Why is this not?
What'd you do?
What did I do? Did I break it?
Technical difficulties.
Apparently.
We broke the internet.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay,
The people need to know. The people need to know.
I know. I need to know. Oh yeah, sorry. I was doubting myself. That's right. Pluto was on Cain's list too. Okay, yeah. Number 4 is Pluto. Number 3 is Jujutsu Kaisen second season. Number 2 is Frieren Beyond Journey's End, and number 1 is Vinland Saga season 2.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I know that the aggregate list of everyone will look much different.
Oh yeah.
I already know which one's number 1, I'm pretty sure.
All right, let's do everyone together now. So now we have number 10 with 28 points and one number 1. Actually a two-way tie. Both of these were 28 points with one number 1, and that is Skip and Loafer and Link Click season 2.
Nice.
Number 9 with 30 points is the 100 Girlfriends that really love you. Number 8. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I can't wait till Inio Asano's new anime gets made so we can put Dead Demons Destruction on our lists.
Yep. Which is kind of similar to the title of this one, because in Japanese, it's die 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 die.
That's true.
Yeah, so number 8 is Jigoku Raku, Hell's Paradise, 31 points. Number 7 is Danmachi Season 4, Part 2, with 31 points and one number 1. Number 6 is The Apothecary Diaries, with 49 points. Number 5, Jujutsu Kaisen, second season, 61 points. Number 4, Mushoku Tensei 2, with 62 points and 3 number 1s. Number 3, Vinland Saga Season 2, 82 points, 4 number 1s. Number 2, Oshinoko, 114 points, 5 number 1s. And number 1, Frieren Beyond Journey's End, 129 points. Pretty big gulf there, actually.
Wow.
I
thought Oshinoko had it, but damn.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good for Frieren.
Let's go.
Yeah, even if another person gave it even if a few other people gave it number 1, I don't think it would have even topped it. So yeah, Frieren is on top for overall of the, what do we have here, 27 lists that we have.
The difference in mana was just indescribable.
Can't stop, won't stop.
I will say, no matter what, Yoasobi wins because they did the opening for both number 1 and number 2 here.
They are fucking, they were big
That's
before
crazy.
those songs, but they are giants in Japan now.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Wow.
unless anyone has any thoughts on the aggregates beyond that, we can round it out.
I just gotta say, it was nice that I was organically able to touch on most of my side list stuff,
Mhm.
but I did want to mention, because I think the boys would like this, that I also gave an award to the show that was the best buddy who was also a daddy, going to Buddy Daddies.
The perfect award.
That's a show that existed, yeah.
I think it deserved that award.
Fantastic.
All right, I'm good.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. I know this was a bit of a longer episode, as these ones tend to be. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you find podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. Google Podcasts is actually being deprecated this year in favor of YouTube Music. So you can move your subscriptions over there for now. We're going to look into making the show actually searchable on that platform. Hopefully they improve on that a little bit. I think you have until April at least. And, Google is bad at deprecating things. So hopefully you'll have longer if that's the platform you use. Also on Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Alexa, Amazon Music, Facebook, whatever they call their thing. Fandompost.com, and again, anywhere else you find us. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Fandompost Radio, or email us at fandompostradio@gmail.com. Send us any of your thoughts or any rankings you didn't get to us in time. Again, all that hate mail goes at HellshakeBrando.
Come fight me.
Yeah. So you can go into where people can find you, Bran.
Yes, Hellshake Brando on all the socials. Come fight me on Twitter. 2023, pretty light year in terms of actual social posting. Will 2024 be any different? Who knows?
Yeah, I'm also entirely absent. Well, not entirely, but mostly absent on social media. But if for some reason you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter/X at DJ No Style. You can find my video game at lessonsinlovegame.com.
Nice.
They can't find me anywhere but here.
Yeah, exclusivity.
Wow.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at FullMetalKioma. I accidentally made a post there, and I regretted it.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back before too long to dig into this fresh new season of anime. So until then, see you later.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
See ya.